Chapter 882. With the support of the boundless energy, Murong Yu's lightning divinity continued to break through. Very quickly, it reached the peak of the late true God stage. He was just one step away from the heavenly God stage. However, at this moment, his cultivation level stopped increasing. He stopped breaking through. Of course, this was what everyone else saw. In reality, Murong Yu's strength was still increasing. Primal God Lattice, Spatial God Lattice. These two God lattices were originally in the early true God stage. They weren't even at the peak of the early true God stage. But now, with the support of the boundless energy, the two God lattices continued to increase. Peak of the early true God stage, middle true God stage, late true God stage. In less than half a day, Murong Yu's three God lattices had all reached the peak of the late true God stage. Other than Murong Yu, the only other person who knew that Murong Yu had three God lattices was Old Man Pei. During this process, he only looked at Murong Yu. Seeing how Murong Yu continued to break through, the shock on his face became more and more obvious. Of course, no one could tell what was different about Divine Dr. Pei. This was because everyone was looking at Murong Yu in shock. Rumble. Not long after the three God lattices reached the peak of the late true God stage, under Murong Yu's control, the lightning divinity was the first to break through. It broke through the barrier between the heavenly God stage and the true God stage and stepped into the heavenly God stage. After ascending to the God world, he reached the heavenly God stage in a short few decades. This speed was absolutely shocking. Furthermore, after Murong Yu's breakthrough, his cultivation continued to soar under everyone's astonished gazes. Peak of the early heavenly God stage, middle heavenly God stage, late heavenly God stage. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were all stunned. There was no lack of so-called geniuses and monsters present. However, they had never seen a person continuously breaking through after breaking through. In half a day, Murong Yu broke through 4 small realms. He even crossed the barrier of a large realm. Such speed of breakthrough deeply shocked everyone. This kid is truly terrifying. I wonder if he can continue to break through and reach the level of an overgod in one go. After a long while, someone suppressed the shock in his heart and asked in a deep voice, "It might be possible. This brat is too monstrous. Those so-called geniuses are simply trash in front of him. Maybe it's because of that cultivation technique. It must be because of that cultivation technique. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to increase his cultivation by 4 minor realms." Thinking of this, everyone looked at Murong Yu with even more fervor. They were full of greed and covetousness. However, if they knew that Murong Yu didn't only have one godhead, would they be scared to death? After lightning divinity stopped breaking through, the primal chaos God lattice and spatial God lattice also broke through to the late heavenly God stage. All 3 godheads had reached the late stage heavenly God realm. Finally, under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the raging waves of energy gradually dissipated. As for Murong Yu, his strength also stopped at the late stage heavenly God stage. All 3 godheads were at the late stage heavenly God stage. Murong Yu alone was equivalent to 3 people. However, the stacking of 3 godheads definitely far surpassed the combined might of 3 heavenly gods. If Murong Yu's various divine abilities and divine skills were added, his strength would soar countless times. After breaking through, Murong Yu didn't get up from the ground. Instead, he continued to sit cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. The breakthrough of Godhead and cultivation was one aspect. The other aspect was that his army commands in battle had all broken through. The army character was already at the second stage. It had manifested the illusory light wings. Now, it had directly broken through to the 3rd stage. Of course, the speed of the army character after entering the 3rd stage was definitely incomparable to the 2nd stage. The speed had increased by a terrifying 1,000 times. This was the most basic thing. Moreover, Murong Yu faintly felt that the illusory light wings had also changed. As for what kind of change it was, he would only know after he used it. The battle character had also broken through and entered the second stage. The increase in battle strength had also reached 10 times. 10 times of battle strength seemed like a small amount. It was as if it could be ignored. However, one had to know that in this world, there were secret techniques that could increase battle strength. However, the increase wasn't much. Normally, it would only be 1 or 2 times. Most importantly, those secret techniques that increased battle strength overdraft the body's potential, burn the life force, and so on. They would cause varying degrees of damage to the body and lifespan. However, the battle character had no side effects at all. The most terrifying thing was that it had increased battle strength by 10 times. Of course, the increase didn't seem to be large. However, just think about it. Originally, 2 people with the same battle strength were fighting, but suddenly one person's battle strength increased by 10 times out of nowhere. Wouldn't that person be able to kill the other person in an instant? Moreover, when encountering a strong enemy, the increase in battle strength by 10 times could not only turn defeat into victory, but could also turn the tables and kill the other party. Moreover, the higher one's strength, the more terrifying the increase in battle strength would be. If Murong Yu reached the heavenly venerable realm, that realm would already be the pinnacle existence in the God realm. If Murong Yu's battle strength increased by 10 times, wouldn't he be able to kill heavenly venerables like slaughtering dogs? The army character increased speed. Whether it was chasing or escaping, it was very useful. As for the battle character that increased battle strength, it greatly increased Murong Yu's battle strength. It increased Murong Yu's ability to protect himself and his ability to kill enemies. However, what surprised Murong Yu the most was the breakthrough of the Zai character. The second stage of the Zai character was teleportation. One had to know that the space in the God realm was extremely sturdy. Even if Murong Yu had grasped the rules of space, it was still extremely difficult for him to tear open the void, let alone teleport. Even heavenly venerables were unable to teleport. However, the Zai character actually allowed Murong Yu to teleport. This was definitely a godly technique that was necessary for killing and escaping. When Murong Yu found out about the teleportation ability of the Zai character, he couldn't help but become excited. He almost couldn't help but want to try out the power of teleportation. However, he knew that now wasn't the time. After the Zai character broke through to the second stage, not only did it give Murong Yu the ability to teleport, but it also gave him the ability to teleport. In addition, Murong Yu's spatial compatibility with the realm of the gods became even tighter. In other words, if Murong Yu wanted to use techniques like space slash or space oscillation, the power would be even stronger than before, suppressing the various kinds of excitement in his heart. Murong Yu activated the formation character that he had just obtained. Perhaps it was because he had cultivated 3 9-syllables mantra previously. After the formation character entered Murong Yu's body, he directly succeeded in cultivating the formation character. Of course, this was only the beginning stage. Telepathy, invisibility. When Murong Yu saw the effect of the formation character, or rather, the effect of the formation character, his mind exploded like thunder on a sunny day. Telepathy was one thing. He could vaguely feel the thoughts in the other's heart and was more sensitive to danger. However, the invisibility ability was heaven-defying. Invisibility. It was not ordinary invisibility. In the past, Murong Yu could also achieve invisibility. Many people in the realm of the gods could do so. However, those were not considered invisibility. At most, they could only be considered as camouflage. It was just using some method to hide one's aura and senses. However, for experts of the same level or higher, or even those with strong senses, it was impossible to achieve invisibility. However, the invisibility of the formation character was true invisibility. Once invisibility was achieved, even if one was standing in front of you, you would not be able to see them. Even your divine will would not be able to detect them. Invisibility was definitely an assassin's dream. In fact, it was an ability that everyone wanted. After all, the benefits of invisibility were self-evident. Every word of the 9 syllables mantra had heaven-defying power. Now, there were only 4 words. Who knew what heaven-defying abilities the other 5 words had? If he could cultivate all 9 words, what changes would there be? Would he be able to control the Yin-Huang immortal realm directly, just like how he controlled the 36 cultivation realms? As Mu Rongyu pondered, he gradually suppressed the excitement in his heart. With such heaven-defying means, who cares if they are from the Divine Alliance, the Immortal Palace, or the Heavenly Punisher Palace? Bring it on. Mu Rongyu's eyes shone brightly. Previously, he had been worried that his identity had been exposed and that he had obtained the formation character in front of so many people. Now he was relieved. Although he did not have the ability to deal with those super experts now, he could leave this place. But as long as he could leave this place, who would be able to find him? If he was forced into a corner, he would go invisible and assassinate like an assassin. Screw them. After thinking about it, he realized that he could not continue to break through to the next level. The formation character was not something that could be improved in a short period of time. Therefore, he stopped cultivating and comprehending. He opened his eyes and stood up. Although Mu Rongyu was cultivating, he was aware of what was happening around him. Old Man Pei, 2 beautiful ladies, thank you. Therefore, when he woke up, the first thing he did was to bow to them to express his gratitude. Kid, no one will dare to touch you today, Old Man Pei said indifferently. Although the Ouyang sisters did not say anything, their expressions showed their thoughts. Kid, hand over that cultivation technique. Seeing that Mu Rongyu had woken up, those who had been suppressed by Old Man Pei and the Ouyang sisters could no longer suppress their greed and started to clamor. Why? Do you think trash like you can comprehend that cultivation technique? Mu Rongyu slowly swept his gaze around the room. Then, his face suddenly turned cold as he coldly shouted. Hearing this, everyone's faces changed. Even Divine Dr. Pei and the Ouyang sisters, who were beside Mu Rongyu, were shocked. Mu Rongyu's words had directly offended those people, and there was no way to salvage the situation. And this was all done by Mu Rongyu on purpose. Chapter 883. Mu Rongyu had never been an arrogant and conceited person, but now he was doing it on purpose. These people were too much. If they were in another place, Mu Rongyu might have suppressed the anger in his heart. However, in the natural chasm, everyone's strength was suppressed. With just the strength of their physical bodies, who would be afraid of who? Before obtaining the formation character formula, Mu Rongyu was not afraid of these people. Now, not only had his strength increased, but he had also achieved breakthroughs in the army character formula. Mu Rongyu's strength had increased by at least 100 times compared to before the natural chasm. In fact, Mu Rongyu was confident that he would even dare to attack a heavenly venerable. If anyone dared to attack him today, even a heavenly venerable would die here. Mu Rongyu was sure. Divine Dr. Pei, you have seen it for yourself. This brat doesn't appreciate your kindness at all. Moreover, he is so arrogant. No matter what, I have to teach this brat a lesson today and let him know the difference between seniors and juniors. One of them said coldly as he looked at Mu Rongyu with murderous intent. Indeed, this brat is too arrogant. If we don't teach him a lesson, he will not know his limits. All of them looked at Mu Rongyu with murderous intent. Under their righteousness, they could not hide the greed in their hearts. A sneer appeared on Mu Rongyu's face as he looked at the faces of these people. Some of these people might be angry because of his words. However, Mu Rongyu was sure that most of them were greedy. They coveted the formation character formula that Mu Rongyu had obtained. Old Man Pei frowned slightly as he looked at Mu Rongyu, but did not say a word. On the other hand, Ouyang Tong was unhappy. Mu Rongyu, are you courting death? Ouyang Tong was very unhappy. Previously, when Mu Rongyu was cultivating, they had to withstand a lot of pressure to suppress those people. It could be said that they had to rely on the families behind them. However, Mu Rongyu was so arrogant after he woke up. He was acting recklessly and overestimating himself. This made Ouyang Tong feel that she had helped the wrong person. It was not worth it to help Mu Rongyu, this arrogant brat. In other words, The current Murong Yu gave her the feeling of a dog relying on its master's power to bully others. She felt that Murong Yu was borrowing the power of divine Dr. Pei and the Ouyang family. The three of you. I'm not an arrogant and overconfident person. As if he knew what Ouyang Tong was thinking, he continued, but now, many people think that the technique I obtained is very heaven-defying. The reason why I was able to advance by 4 small realms is because of that technique. The truth is, the reason why I broke through wasn't entirely because of that cultivation method. But even if I tell them, I don't think they will believe me. Furthermore, although the three of you can suppress them for the time being, however, they would definitely not let this matter rest. Even if they won't make a move now, once they leave this place, they will definitely make a move. With my strength, do you think I can escape from their hands? Ouyang Tong went silent. She naturally knew that Murong Yu was speaking the truth. Hence, she had nothing to say. You can follow us back to the Ouyang family. We will protect you, Ouyang Yin suddenly said. Ouyang Tong's eyes lit up as she replied. That's right. You can follow us back to the Ouyang family. Perhaps you can stay with Old Man Pei. I don't think they will dare to make a move. Murong Yu shook his head and said, let's not talk about whether they will dare to make a move. Even if I can safely reach the Ouyang family, can you guarantee that no one in the Ouyang family will be interested in my technique? Furthermore, once this news spreads, I'm sure many big shots in the divine world will be interested in this technique. At that time, can the Ouyang family withstand the pressure and protect me? Ouyang Tong went silent again. This was because she did not dare to answer Murong Yu's question with certainty. She was not greedy for the formation character formula that Murong Yu obtained, but it was hard to guarantee that others would not. Hence, I will settle this matter today. I will teach those who dare to make a move on me a lesson. I will let them know that even if I, Murong Yu, am only a divine realm expert, I will not be bullied by others. If they want to make a move on me, then they will have to bear my wrath and be prepared to be killed. Murong Yu's killing intent sword. His voice was as cold as ice, emitting a terrifying chill. Kid, are you sure you can deal with these people and protect your life at the same time? At this time, Murong Yu suddenly heard Old Man Pei's voice. Hearing Old Man Pei's caring voice, Murong Yu's heart warmed. Although he had not known Old Man Pei for long, this sloppy old man was only interested in him and did not have any bad intentions. He was many times better than those who coveted him. Of course, if Old Man Pei was just pretending and harbored ill intentions towards Murong Yu was confident that Old Man Pei was not that kind of person. Seeing that Murong Yu did not reply, Old Man Pei continued to transmit his voice. If you're not sure, I could take you away from here and leave the toxic continent. I guarantee that they will never find you. Murong Yu suddenly smiled. Old Man Pei, I appreciate your kindness. But today, not only will I be able to escape unscathed, but if anyone dares to make a move on me, even if they are heavenly venerables, I will make them fall. Old Man Pei was startled when he heard Murong Yu's confident words. He vaguely felt something, but when he tried to grab it, that feeling disappeared. All right, if it doesn't work, I will make a move immediately. Old Man Pei said, no longer trying to persuade Murong Yu. Old Man Pei, later on, you and the Ouyang sister stay away from me. Stay as far away as possible. Murong Yu suddenly smiled brilliantly. Trash, if I'm not wrong. Today, I will give you a chance. If you want to obtain my cultivation technique, come and try. Murong Yu looked at the people around him and said loudly. His expression was full of disdain. Brat, you are too arrogant. Aren't you just relying on divine, Dr. Pei, and the Ouyang clan? Someone said disdainfully. I won't get involved in this matter. Old Man Pei glanced at the person who had spoken and then left. The Ouyang sisters were anxious. Ouyang Tong glared at Old Man Pei. Old Man Pei, I misjudged you. Didn't you say that you wanted to accept Murong Yu as your disciple? Why don't you care about his life now? This brat is too arrogant. He is simply a jinx. This old man still wants to live for a few more years. Divine Dr. Pei shook his head and said indifferently. You. Ouyang Tong was infuriated. Just as she was about to continue speaking, Old Man Pei continued. If the two of you still want me to go to the Ouyang family, it's best if you don't interfere with that brat's business. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. The Ouyang sisters' faces changed. Ouyang Yin gritted her teeth and said to Murong Yu, Murong Yu, we cannot help you with this matter. We are sorry. Murong Yu turned his head and grinned at the two girls. Are you out of your mind? How can you still smile at this time? Ouyang Tong couldn't help but scold Murong Yu. You should not be worried about me. You should be worried that those bastards will attack me. These people will be killed by me. As for the forces behind them, I will destroy them one by one in the future. I, Murong Yu, will not offend those who do not offend me. But if someone offends me, I will destroy them completely. I'm going to die from anger because of you. Ouyang Tong was so angry that her face turned red. She walked towards Old Man Pei angrily. Murong Yu smiled. He didn't blame the two ladies. After all, the fact that these two women had protected him before was already considered a good person. Haha, Murong Yu, aren't you very arrogant? Now, even Divine Dr. Pei and the Ouyang clan are no longer your backing. Let's see how arrogant you can be. This is a classic example of a fox exploiting the tiger's might. Now that the tiger is gone, you have returned to the face of an ant. In an instant, countless people were mocking Murong Yu. Murong Yu looked at the crowd without any change in his expression. You're all trash. Did your parents only teach you to use your mouths? Trash will always be trash. Today, I will say these words. If you're not afraid of death, come at me. But you will have to bear the consequences. Today, those who dare to attack me will all die. Moreover, the powers behind you will be flattened by me. Now, if you don't want to die, come out. Ha! Murong Yu, are you trying to make me laugh to death? Just based on your ant-like realm? Today, I will let you know that not everyone can be offended. A voice came from the crowd, following which, Murong Yu's old acquaintance, Ji, rushed out. So it's you, trash. Back then in the immortal world, I killed you once. Now, I can kill you again. However, I am curious. Back then in the immortal world, I only killed your physical body. If I kill you now, will you still have another life? Ji's face turned gloomy. Being killed by Murong Yu was the greatest humiliation of his life. He always wanted to kill Murong Yu. However, he also knew that if he died now, he wouldn't have another life. Because back then in the immortal world, it was only his physical body and a wisp of his soul. When the physical body was killed, the wisp of his soul returned to this body. Jita laughed sinisterly. Everyone knows how to boast. No matter how beautiful your words are, you'll definitely die today. As he spoke, Jita stomped on the ground and charged towards Murong Yu. Halfway there, an iron fist fiercely smashed towards Murong Yu's head. He wanted to blow up Murong Yu's head. Too slow. Murong Yu shook his head. At the same time, his figure flashed and disappeared. Ji was shocked. The surrounding people were also shocked because they saw that Murong Yu had indeed disappeared into thin air. Chapter 884. In less than an instant, Murong Yu disappeared again. Teleportation. At this moment, everyone had the same thought. However, they did not believe it. In the realm of the gods, it was impossible to teleport, let alone in the heavenly chasm where one's strength was suppressed. He's just too fast, someone thought. The young master of the Divine Alliance is just SOSO. Murong Yu's words suddenly rang in Ji Yunshu's ears, who was still in shock from Murong Yu's sudden disappearance. At the same time, a dangerous aura shrouded his heart. Thousand Army Elephant Draw Fist. At this moment, Murong Yu made his move. Although it was not a killing move, it was an extremely violent move of the Dragon Elephant Prajna skill. Because he could not use his strength here, Murong Yu did not use the fighting word art to increase his fighting strength. In fact, even if he used it, it would not increase his fighting strength. After all, strength was the foundation for everything. But even so, it was enough. Bang! With Murong Yu's speed, Ji did not even have time to react before he was punched in the back. Although he did not have divine power, Murong Yu's physical strength was not that easy to resist. Puffed! He spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his entire body was directly sent flying. In the eyes of the crowd, Ji's body was cracked. It was a tragic sight. It was not that Murong-Yu's physical body was too abnormal, but that Ji's physical body was too weak. In the realm of the gods, almost everyone paid attention to the cultivation of their own strength. Although one's cultivation and strength were getting stronger, in the process, the strength would constantly temper the physical body, and the physical body would become stronger. However, there was a limit to this strength. Ordinary people would have a physical body after becoming a god. If they did not pay attention to the cultivation of their physical body, even if their physical body was stronger than a god's, it would not be much stronger. Although Ji's physical body was stronger than a god's by a little bit. However, it was not enough in front of Murong-Yu. It could easily destroy Ji's physical body. Thus, with a single strike, Ji's body was torn apart, and he coughed up blood. Die! Murong-Yu let out a sinister laugh and decided to start with GMO. He slid his feet, and with a sway of his body, he disappeared on the spot again. Teleport. 1,000 army elephant drawing fist. It was still the same move, but the power was even more terrifying. He punched out fiercely, and a layer of ripples appeared in the void. At this moment, GXN was enveloped by an intense aura of death. In an instant, his face turned pale with fright. Good thief. Stop. At this moment, a loud shout was heard. A figure suddenly rushed out from the crowd and pounced on Murong-Yu. The person who came was Ji's senior brother, Zhao Lifeng. This person's strength should have already surpassed the Heavenly King realm and reached the Heavenly Emperor realm, a super powerhouse of the Heavenly Emperor realm. But here, celestial emperors were the same as ordinary people. They could only use the power of their physical bodies. They could only attack with punches and palms. Under such circumstances, even if an Empyrean came, Murong-Yu's expression would not change too. Your strength is too weak. Seeing Zhao Lifeng charging over, Murong-Yu sneered and actually did not have the slightest intention of blocking or dodging, allowing him to attack. But Murong-Yu's fist suddenly accelerated, a punch landing on Ji's body. Bang! Bang! At virtually the same time, when Murong-Yu's fist bombarded Ji's body, Zhao Lifeng also smashed a punch onto Murong-Yu's body. But the result was strangely different. Zhao Lifeng only felt as if he seemed to have bombarded a piece of red-hot soldering iron, his fist being shaken until it hurt. Murong-Yu was merely pushed forward a few steps by his bombardment. But Ji, who was killed by Murong-Yu's punch, was more miserable. Not only was his entire person sent flying out again, half of his body was shattered by the terrifying power. Truly terrifying. Whoosh! At the same time, Murong-Yu teleported once again and disappeared from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Ji. His invincible divine fist smashed out again. Boom! Under Ji's horrified gaze, his head exploded like a rotten watermelon from Murong-Yu's punch. The young master of the Divine Union, a heavenly king powerhouse, had been killed by Murong-Yu, who was only a sky celestial. This was probably the first heavenly king in history to die at the hands of a sky celestial. It was an extremely humiliating death. Murong-Yu, you've gone too far. I'm going to kill you. Zhao Lifeng and the other members of the Divine Union were stunned when they saw that Ji had been killed. Now that their young master had been killed, they would most likely be killed by the furious Divine Union chief. The only way to salvage the situation and save their lives was to kill Murong-Yu. Kill! With a loud roar, the members of the Divine Union jumped out and attacked Murong-Yu. Every member of the Divine Union had a cultivation base much higher than Murong-Yu's. If this had been any other place, he would have escaped in a Hichu Luoshu long ago. However, he wanted to kill all these people now. Whoever dared to make a move would die. Murong-Yu bellowed as his body moved and charged towards one of the Divine Union powerhouses. This time, Murong-Yu did not choose to meet force with force. Instead, he kept teleporting and attacking only one person. With the heaven-defying technique of teleportation, The members of the Divine Union could not attack him at all. They could not even touch the corner of his clothes. However, every time Murong Yu appeared, he would attack the same person. Furthermore, his physical body was stronger than anyone else's in the Divine Union. As a result, the members of the Divine Union were simply no match for him. It didn't take long for the second Divine Union member to be blasted to death. If there was a first, there would be a second. In an instant, Murong Yu was like a phantom that kept appearing and disappearing. The members of the Divine Union were constantly being killed. In less than half a day, the corpses of the members of the Divine Union were strewn all over the ground. Only Zhao Lifeng, who was the strongest, was left. However, Zhao Lifeng was not having a good time either. One of his arms had been broken by Murong Yu. Breaking his limbs, or even his physical body, was not a fatal injury for a godlike being. This meant that he could recover by consuming some divine power. However, his power was suppressed here. Therefore, Zhao Lifeng could not regenerate his broken arm. In this place, where he could only use his physical strength, losing an arm would cause his combat strength to drop. The Divine Union will not let you off. After another half a day, Murong Yu smashed Zhao Lifeng's head with a punch. Before he was killed, Zhao Lifeng uttered some harsh words like the others before him. "Idiot, if I was really afraid of the Divine Union, would I dare to kill you? If I dare to kill you, I wouldn't be afraid of the Divine Union's revenge. Furthermore, one day, I will eradicate the Divine Union and leave no one alive." Murong Yu sneered. Heavenly Emperor. The first Heavenly Emperor had fallen. He had been killed by Murong Yu, a Heavenly Celestial. During this process, no one outside the Divine Union made a move against Murong Yu. They wanted to see clearly how strong Murong Yu was. Furthermore, they were stunned by Murong Yu's teleportation ability. Murong Yu's teleportation ability was equivalent to being in an invincible position. How could anyone fight him? Just like the members of the Divine Union, they could only be abused by Murong Yu. Even though Zhao Lifeng had been killed, everyone only looked at Murong Yu in shock, horror, and suspicion. Of course, there was no lack of greed and covetousness among them. Are all of you trash afraid? If you're afraid, then scram. Murong Yu sneered as he swept his gaze around the room. Afraid? Indeed, many people were afraid. If this had been any other place, many people present would have been able to blow Murong Yu to death with a single breath. However, so what if they were heavenly emperors or even higher existences? Their physical bodies weren't strong, so they could be killed by Murong Yu. Although they were greedy and coveted the formation symbol art, if they lost their lives, so what if they obtained the cultivation technique? There was a saying that the longer one lived, the more one didn't want to die. This was the type of person they were. However, many people felt extremely sullen deep down. Their identities aside, they were powerful enough to call the wind and summon the rain in the celestial realm. Now, they were being suppressed by a mere heavenly celestial. How could they not feel sullen? What? You want to obtain the cultivation technique, yet you are afraid of death? You are indeed the best of the worst trash. You even said that you were a powerhouse of some cultivation realm, the leader of some faction, or a core member of some upper echelon. All of you are trash. Among you, there are heavenly emperors, primordial gods, and even heavenly venerables. Today, the peak existences of the celestial realm were suppressed by a mere heavenly celestial. If news of this spreads, you don't have to show your faces in the celestial realm anymore. Murong Yu sneered and mocked them. Hearing Murong Yu calling them trash left and right, the surrounding people were so angry that their faces turned ashen. On the other side, Old Man Pei and the Ouyang sisters were so shocked that their jaws dropped to the ground. If someone had said that a heavenly celestial could point at a group of ants who were many times stronger than him and scold them without daring to show his face, they wouldn't have believed it even if they were beaten to death. However, today they believed it. Murong Yu had created a miracle that shook the celestial realm. If news of this spread, the entire celestial realm would be shaken. Kid, don't be so arrogant. You are only relying on your physical strength. If you leave heaven's moat, I will be the first to kill you. In the crowd, someone finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted angrily. If you want to kill me, I welcome it. But why wait until we leave this place? I'm standing here now, waiting for you to kill me. If you have the ability, then come out. Don't hide in the crowd like a tortoise. Don't let me, a mere heavenly celestial, look down on you. Murong Yu sneered. Chapter 885. Silence. Still silence. Murong Yu just stood there quietly, without saying a word. However, the people around him remained silent and did not say a word. However, their faces were filled with anger. Murong Yu was slapping them in the face, and it was a resounding slap at that. However, the only thing they could do right now was to swallow their grievances and endure Murong Yu's vicious slaps in the face with anger and resentment. They did not dare resist or stand up for themselves. This was because even a heavenly venerate powerhouse could not guarantee that they would be able to kill Murong Yu under such circumstances. On the contrary, they had a higher chance of being killed by Murong Yu. Murong Yu's physical strength was already stronger than theirs. Coupled with his teleportation, they could not even touch the corner of Murong Yu's clothes, let alone kill Murong Yu. Therefore, they became turtles who hid their heads in their shells. However, this was only temporary. Murong Yu dared to guarantee that they would attack Murong Yu as soon as they left this place. Therefore, although Murong Yu had killed the Divine Union's people, it was not enough to intimidate them. He wanted to intimidate these people completely. Kid, you are indeed strong in this special environment. That we all admit. However, do you think you're a match for all of us? If we join forces, do you think you can still use your teleportation? A voice was heard. At the same time, the crowd surged and a group of more than 10 people stood together and closed in on Murong Yu. Teleportation. Murong Yu had not teleported before. Therefore, many people thought that teleportation was the formation word art, which was the cultivation technique on the huge rock. Therefore, everyone coveted this cultivation technique even more and became greedier. However, they were suppressed by Murong Yu and could not make a move. However, when they heard that person's words, they could not help but react. There was not much here. The only thing that was abundant was people. As long as they swarmed forward and squeezed together, Murong Yu would not be able to escape. Murong Yu didn't even have a place to stand. So how could he teleport? If Murong Yu could not teleport, then they would swarm him. Even if Murong Yu's body was strong enough to withstand the attack of one person, what about 10 people? What about the attack of 100, 1,000, or even more people? Murong Yu would definitely not be able to take it. At the thought of this, other than the previous dozen or so people, even more people had already rushed towards Murong Yu. Originally, the place where Murong Yu was located was a vacuum. However, this space was gradually diminishing. If you don't want to die today, then scram. Otherwise, I guarantee that all of you will die. Don't blame me for not warning you beforehand. Seeing the crowd closing in, Murong Yu sneered in his heart, but on the surface, his face became serious. Haha, Murong Yu, who do you think you are? Do you think you're a match for all of us? One of them pointed at Murong Yu and laughed. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes, and a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Whoever attacks today will die. At this moment, Old Man Pei and the Ouyang sisters did not come closer. The Ouyang sisters looked worried. Old Man Pei, are you really not going to help? Are you going to let Murong Yu be killed by these people? Old Man Pei's expression was indifferent. This kid is very confident. I believe that he can resolve this situation. Moreover, I believe that after this, Murong Yu's name will resound throughout the 4 continents and the entire God realm. Old Man Pei, why are you so confident in him? Do you know what he's capable of? Ouyang Tong looked at Old Man Pei suspiciously. I don't know anything. However, I believe in Murong Yu, Old Man Pei said calmly. He had indeed chosen to believe in Murong Yu. This was the belief that Murong Yu had given him. Old Man Pei, the 2 beauties of the Ouyang family, stepped back. Leave this place. At this moment, Murong Yu's voice rang in their ears. Let's go. Old Man Pei said calmly before he quickly retreated. The Ouyang sisters looked at each other and finally retreated. Haha. Murong Yu, Weren't you very arrogant and conceited before? Are you afraid now? Why are we talking so much nonsense with him? Let's take him down and suppress him first. This chaotic brat was simply too hateful. After this, I suggest that we don't kill him. I will torture him for billions of years and let him have a taste of what it's like to live a life worse than death. Someone said savagely, "Stop wasting time. Let's take him down and force him to reveal the cultivation technique." That's invisibility. Invisibility. In an instant, the crowd was closing in on Murongyu. They were all filled with killing intent and wanted to kill Murongyu. However, Murongyu still stood in the same spot, and his expression did not change. You're still pretending when you're about to die? You're ignorant and conceited. If we weren't in heaven's moat, I could crush you with a finger. Murongyu smiled disdainfully and looked at the person who spoke. How about you crush me with a finger now? Let me see. Silence. Even a heavenly venerable would not dare to say that he could crush Murongyu with a finger. Why are we talking so much nonsense with him? Let's oppress him first. Seeing Murongyu being surrounded by the crowd, the Ouyang sisters, who were watching from afar, revealed looks of worry. However, at this point, they had no other choice. They could only watch as Murongyu was drowned by the crowd. Ha ha! Suddenly, Murongyu burst into laughter. His laughter was extremely carefree. Idiots! Among the people who surrounded me, there was no lack of heavenly emperors, primordial gods, and even heavenly venerables. You guys joined forces with others to deal with me, a heavenly venerable. Don't you feel ashamed? Are you guys really shameless to this extent? His voice spread out, and countless people's faces could not help but turn red. With their strength and status, doing this was really too embarrassing. Kid, don't think too highly of yourself. How could this sovereign attack you with other people? I just don't like you and want to teach you a lesson. A super powerhouse barely found a shameless reason. That's right. We all just want to suppress you. Who joined forces? Looking at their shameless appearances, Murongyu's face turned red. He blushed for them. It was really too embarrassing. A bunch of hypocritical bastards. You guys joined forces and still don't dare to admit it. You guys are indeed trash. The best of the trash. Murongyu laughed loudly. He was extremely disdainful of these people. Hearing Murongyu's words, everyone no longer remained silent. Some people just kept cursing Murongyu and quickly approached. However, no one dared to attack Murongyu. This was because the people who approached all wanted to get Murongyu's cultivation method. Once someone made a move, the others would also make a move. In this way, if they were not careful, they would accidentally kill Murongyu. Let's split up a few people to attack together and suppress him. Someone discussed and then began to attack Murongyu. Idiots, don't you feel that it's strange? With my speed, it would be easy for me to teleport out of here. However, I've been standing here without moving. Do you know why? Murongyu suddenly laughed. In the eyes of others, that smile was a little strange and sinister. No matter what methods you have, you can't escape today. Why do I have to escape? Why don't you want to escape? We shake our heads. Are you trying to be funny? The surrounding people burst into laughter. The person who attacked had already approached Murongyu. What if I say that I can attract the heavenly tribulation? Do you think you can escape? Murongyu's face was full of smiles. Thump! Everyone's hearts twitched violently. It was as if they had been hit by a divine hammer. But all cultivators were most afraid of the heavenly tribulation. Countless people had died in the heavenly tribulation. If they attracted the heavenly tribulation, even if they had all kinds of magic weapons and peak strength, they might not be able to survive. Not to mention that they could not use any magic weapons or magic weapons here. They could not use any power. Moreover, there were so many people here. Once the heavenly tribulation descended, they would definitely die. Do you think we're idiots? You can attract the heavenly tribulation? What a joke. A person said disdainfully. Whether I'm an idiot or not, I don't know. But what I know is that you're all dead. Heavenly tribulation come? Murongyu suddenly shouted. Rumble, as if responding to Murongyu's words. Before he finished speaking, the sky was already covered by a thick layer of lightning flashing dark clouds. Tribulation clouds. Everyone present had read about the divine tribulation before, so they were naturally familiar with the tribulation clouds. At this moment, when they saw the tribulation clouds, they were almost scared to death. Immediately, countless people ran towards the distance. Who dared to attack Morongyu? Run for your life first. It's too late. Morongyu's voice rang out. It was as if he had pronounced the death sentence for everyone. Rumble. A terrifying explosion sounded in the void above their heads. Bolts of tribulation lightning shot out from the tribulation clouds, covering a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. At this moment, countless people's faces were filled with fear and despair. This was because they all knew that the moment the tribulation lightning struck, they would have nowhere to run. No matter where they ran to, the heavenly tribulation would not let them go. Therefore, many people gave up on running away. However, there were still some people who did not give up and continued to run wildly. However, the heavenly tribulation had already locked onto them. They were destined to become ashes of the heavenly tribulation, unless they could successfully pass the heavenly tribulation. However, this heavenly tribulation was not only caused by Morongyu breaking through to the divine realm, but also by tens of millions of people. After this heavenly tribulation was triggered by Morongyu, it sensed countless experts around it. Then, the power of the heavenly tribulation increased infinitely. Chapter 886. Hong Lingling. In the void, lightning snakes dashed around, and the tribulation clouds were low, exuding an intimidating might of heaven and earth, suppressing the heaven and earth. Within a radius of hundreds of millions of miles, it instantly became a slaughterhouse of lightning. Accompanied by the continuous explosion of lightning, there were miserable screams and angry curses from the crowd. In less than a breath's time, some of the weaker people who were forced to be involved in the tribulation were turned into ashes under the bombardment of the tribulation lightning. The tribulation lightning triggered by tens of millions of people was extremely terrifying. Some of the gods who had not reached the heavenly king realm could not even withstand the first tribulation lightning. It was the same even for those who had reached the heavenly king realm and above. This was because they could not use magic treasures or divine weapons here. They could not use their power. Their physical strength was too weak, and they could not withstand the tribulation lightning at all. Only Morongyu had a calm expression on his face from the beginning to the end. It was as if he was not afraid of the lightning in the sky at all. In fact, Morongyu was not afraid of the lightning at all. At this moment, he sat down cross-legged, and the lightning divinity circulated crazily. The tribulation lightning that struck down was constantly absorbed by Morongyu's lightning divinity. A part of it strengthened the lightning divinity's power, and a part of it was used by him to temper his physical body. Morongyu's lightning divinity was not an ordinary lightning divinity. It was formed by comprehending the tribulation lightning. At this moment, when facing the tribulation lightning, the lightning divinity erupted with terrifying power. When the tribulation lightning's power struck Morongyu's body, its power naturally weakened. It did not seem like it wanted to kill Morongyu. On the contrary, it seemed like the two came from the same source and showed signs of merging. Of course, it was impossible for Morongyu to completely absorb the power of the tribulation lightning. This was because his physical body and godhead were still relatively weak. Even if the tribulation lightning's power was converted into power, Morongyu would need to digest it slowly. Moreover, even if Morongyu could absorb all the power of the tribulation lightning, he would not improve. That's right. As long as he could absorb enough energy, his strength would continue to increase. There was no limit to his cultivation level. However, he had already advanced by a level. If he was not familiar with the power of the new realm, if he continued to advance, it would cause the problem of an unstable foundation and power. Not only would it not be beneficial to his future cultivation, it would be detrimental to him. Therefore, a portion of the tribulation lightning's power he absorbed was shared equally among the three godheads. At the same time, he used most of the power of the tribulation thunder to temper his body. Murong Yu absorbed the power of the tribulation lightning and used it to temper his body. The screams of the surrounding people began to weaken. This was because more and more people were being killed by the tribulation lightning. In the beginning, a large number of people were killed by the tribulation lightning. However, following that, the number of people killed began to decrease. However, not long after, large numbers of people continued to be killed. This was because the people who were killed at the beginning were the weakest and the easiest to kill. After that, those who were not killed were very strong and difficult to kill. However, as the number of people decreased, the power of the tribulation lightning did not weaken. On the contrary, as the number of people decreased, each person would have to endure more tribulation lightning. This was the reason why more and more people died in the later stages of the war. Looking at the lightning slaughterhouse in front of them, the people who were not involved in the tribulation looked pale and ashen. Too ruthless. Murong Yu's move was too ruthless. He used the tribulation lightning to kill countless experts. Among them, there was no lack of heavenly emperors, primordial gods, and even heavenly venerables. After this battle, Murong Yu's name would resound throughout the realm of the gods. As a heavenly god, he killed countless experts. This was the first in history. It could even be said that he was the first and only person to do so. Regardless of whether Murong Yu could survive the tribulation, his name would already resound throughout the realm of the gods. Normally, there were only 9 stages of tribulation. At the 5th stage, except for Murong Yu, everyone who was involved in the tribulation lightning was blown to smithereens. Now, at the center of the tribulation, there was only Murong Yu, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. There are still 4 more stages of tribulation, each more dangerous than the last. I wonder if Murong Yu has the ability to survive? In an instant, countless people looked at Murong Yu in awe. Good boy. No wonder you were so confident. So you still had this move. You've really screwed those people over. Seeing this scene, Old Man Pei felt his heart beat wildly. He was shocked by Murong Yu's madness and arrogance. The beautiful sisters of the Ouyang family were even more frightened. They had completely witnessed Murong Yu's madness. I wonder if this guy can survive the last 4 stages of tribulation. The beautiful sisters muttered in their hearts. However, they looked at Murong Yu nervously. Under the various gazes of the crowd, Murong Yu moved. He stood up abruptly, took a step forward, and disappeared on the spot in a flash. In the next moment, the crowd was stunned to see Murong Yu actually walk around in circles. Each circle was bigger than the previous one. What is this boy doing? Seeing this scene, everyone was confused by Murong Yu's actions. No one knew what Murong Yu was doing. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "He's crazy. This boy is picking up those storage rings." The crowd focused their eyes and saw that wherever Murong Yu went, the storage rings left behind disappeared. They had been taken away by Murong Yu. This boy is really making people speechless. Whether he can survive the tribulation lightning or not is still a question. Now, he's picking up storage rings? The crowd was speechless. They looked at Murong Yu as if they were looking at a monster. They were defeated by Murong Yu's madness and surprise. Boom! Crack, crack! During this process, the 6th tribulation lightning had already struck down. However, Murong Yu's body had been tempered by the 5th tribulation lightning, and his body was even stronger. Coupled with the lightning divinity, the 6th tribulation lightning was not a threat to him at all. Although his body had been split open, revealing terrifying and shocking wounds, he was still able to withstand the attacks. However, Murong Yu kept teleporting and quickly collected those storage rings. In fact, there were not many storage rings. This was because the tribulation lightning was too terrifying. Some of the storage rings could not withstand the tribulation lightning at all and were shattered. Those that were left behind were the more advanced storage rings, and the items inside were also more valuable. As the 7th stage of tribulation lightning struck down, the wounds on Murong Yu's body became even more terrifying. The power of the tribulation lightning was beyond his ability to withstand. I've collected most of the storage rings. It's time to leave this damned place. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. Taking advantage of the fact that the seventh tribulation lightning had not disappeared, he flashed and disappeared. The crowd was already used to Murong Yu's sudden disappearance. This was because they all knew that it was Murong Yu who was teleporting. However, this time, Murong Yu disappeared for a long time. After a few breaths, Murong Yu did not appear in front of them. However, the tribulation clouds that shocked their hearts and souls quickly dissipated. The tribulation clouds dissipated. Murong Yu was killed. It was only the seventh tribulation lightning. The tribulation was not over yet. However, it suddenly disappeared, which meant that all the people undergoing the tribulation were killed. Murong Yu was killed by the tribulation lightning. However, this tragedy caused by Murong Yu will shock the entire God realm. I'm afraid that the power structure of some factions will change because of this. Many people sighed inwardly and began to move, preparing to leave the chasm. In the process, countless people swarmed forward and snatched the storage rings of those who were killed by the tribulation lightning. Murong Yu did not take all of the storage rings. Murong Yu is dead. The Ouyang sisters exchanged a look and saw the pity in each other's eyes. On the other hand, Old Man Pei's expression returned to normal. He had a feeling that Murong Yu would not be killed so easily. The moment Murong Yu disappeared, in a nameless mountain range far away in the dream wilderness, in the sky above the mountain range where Murong Yu had dragged away the dragon's corpse. Suddenly, a huge tribulation cloud appeared out of nowhere and enveloped the mountain range. In an instant, the demonic beasts in the mountain range fled in panic. They all knew that this was a tribulation cloud. Someone was undergoing the tribulation here. They did not want to be killed by the tribulation lightning, so they fled immediately. In the process of fleeing, they saw a figure emerge from the void. It was a young man in black, who seemed to be in the heavenly god realm. They did not have time to think about how a mere heavenly god could trigger such a terrifying tribulation. The demonic beasts fled one after another. The person who appeared was Murong Yu. In the heavenly chasm, Murong Yu truly couldn't withstand the bombardment of the tribulation lightning. Therefore, he entered the Hichu Luo Shu. In fact, he could not summon the Hichu Luo Shu at all. However, Hichu was the artifact spirit of the Hichu Luo Shu. In the Hichu Luo Shu, he could take Murong Yu. Although it was very difficult, it was still possible. Therefore, after Hichu took Murong Yu, he immediately teleported out. He came to the barren mountain range. After returning here, Murong Yu had recovered to his peak condition. The life force in his body began to rush madly, quickly repairing his physical body. At the same time, Murong Yu had already summoned the Hichu Luo Shu to block above his head. It emitted streams of yellow air and enveloped him. At the same time, the power of the three godheads was raised to the extreme. The battle character art was also raised to the extreme, increasing his battle strength by 10 times. As the power circulated, Murong Yu prepared to withstand the last 2 tribulation lightning. In fact, he had no choice but to do so. If he could not withstand it, he would be blasted into dust by the tribulation lightning. He would be dead. Chapter 887. Rumble. There was an explosion in the sky, and a terrible pressure filled the world, intimidating all the realms. The 8th tribulation immediately poured down. Murong Yu's face was solemn, and he immediately took out the Hichu Luo Shu to block above his head. At the same time, he also took out the Yin-Yang Cauldron boom. After an explosion, the endless tribulation thunder bore the brunt of the bombardment on the Hichu Luo Shu. The Hichu Luo Shu suddenly shone brightly, and a dazzling yellow divine light burst out. The Hichu Luo Shu was the most powerful magic treasure in the world, and the first book in the world. Of course, it would not be destroyed by the tribulation thunder, even if it was injured. However, the Hichu Luo Shu did not suffer any damage, but that did not mean that the owner of the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu, was not hurt. His body shook violently, and Murong Yu's mind was instantly injured, and he involuntarily spat out a mouthful of blood. This was because Murong-yu had removed the Hichu Luo Shu the moment the Hichu Luo Shu was hit by the tribulation thunder. Otherwise, if he had used the Hichu Luo Shu to block the tribulation thunder, Hichu would not have been injured, but his mind would have been shattered, and he would have been killed. The Hichu Luo Shu turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the void. The tribulation thunder, which was partially blocked, continued to pour down menacingly, as if it was determined to kill Murong-yu. Murong-yu snorted coldly, and the yin-yang cauldron instantly enlarged, and the yin-yang fire, which could burn everything, poured out and swept towards the tribulation thunder. The yin-yang fire was known as one of the most terrifying fires in the world, and it could burn everything. What would happen if he faced the tribulation thunder? Murong-yu's face was filled with anticipation as he watched the yin-yang cauldron shoot up. Boom! This was the first time that the yin-yang flame and the tribulation lightning came into close contact. Instantly, Murong-yu saw the ferocious tribulation lightning vanish under the raging yin-yang flames. It was burned by the yin-yang flame. Seeing this scene, Murong-yu couldn't help but be shocked by the power of the yin-yang flame. However, even though the yin-yang flame was powerful, it was unable to burn away all the tribulation lightning in a short period of time. However, some tribulation lightning still managed to pass through the encirclement of the yin-yang flames and pour down. There weren't many tribulation lightning bolts, but their power was terrifying. However, it was no longer a threat to Murong-yu. Immediately, Murong-yu soared into the sky and entered the tribulation thunder. He guided the tribulation thunder into his body and tempered it. It didn't take long for the 8th tribulation to pass. There was only one last layer left. The power of the 9th lightning tribulation was thousands of times more terrifying than the previous 8 lightning tribulations combined. If Murong-yu was unable to pass through this last tribulation, then he would be turned into a pile of charcoal. Boom! Finally, the 9th tribulation lightning appeared. However, when he saw the 9th stage of tribulation lightning, Murong-yu was dumbfounded. Unlike the previous tribulation lightning that poured down from the sky, there was only one tribulation lightning in the 9th tribulation lightning. It was a tribulation lightning that took the shape of a human. At this moment, the humanoid tribulation lightning was holding a sharp sword that was transformed from tribulation lightning. It crossed time and space and slashed down at Murong-yu. A sense of danger and death instantly enveloped Murong-yu's heart. He knew that if he couldn't withstand the attack of the humanoid tribulation lightning, he would definitely die. Murong-yu didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately controlled the yin-yang cauldron to attack the tribulation lightning. At the same time, Murong-yu thought that it wasn't safe enough. Therefore, he took out the yin-yang bow and the sky-shaking arrow. Then, he drew the bow and shot an arrow at the tribulation lightning. Boom! The humanoid tribulation lightning raised its sword and slashed down, sending the yin-yang cauldron flying. Of course, during this process, a portion of the humanoid tribulation lightning was also burned away by the yin-yang fire that erupted from the yin-yang fire. However, it wasn't fatal. It was still a terrifying threat to Murong-yu. Whoosh! The sky-shaking arrow turned into a beam of golden light and shot up. The humanoid tribulation lightning was extremely fast. It slashed out with its sword. Boom! After a loud noise, the humanoid tribulation lightning was sent flying. Its power was also weakened. However, the sky-shaking arrow was also struck and lost its power. Murong-yu didn't hesitate at all. He knocked his arrows and shot out the last 2 heaven-shaking arrows. Boom! Boom! The humanoid tribulation lightning's reaction speed was extremely fast. 2 arrows were shot out consecutively, and both of them slashed fiercely on the heaven-shaking arrow. The sky-shaking arrow was sent flying. At the same time, the humanoid tribulation lightning was also sent flying by the terrifying impact. From afar, after being hit several times in a row, the humanoid tribulation lightning dimmed a lot and its power was weakened again. At the same time, the yin-yang cauldron whistled again. The yin-yang fire that filled the entire sky burst out, drowning the entire world. Even the void was burned. Under Murong Yu's gaze, the humanoid tribulation lightning was gradually burned by the yin-yang fire. In the end, there was nothing left. Seeing that the tribulation lightning was all burned, Murong Yu couldn't help but sigh in relief. However, to his dismay, the tribulation clouds in the sky didn't dissipate. Is there a 10th tribulation lightning? Murong Yu had a bad feeling in his heart. He couldn't help but think of the scene in the cultivation world when he used the tribulation lightning to kill the experts in front of the extreme heaven realm. At that time, after the 9 tribulation lightning, another tribulation lightning struck down and almost blasted Murong Yu's soul into powder. I can't be so unlucky, right? The bad feeling in Murong Yu's heart grew stronger. At the same time, the tribulation clouds in the sky began to dissipate quickly. Seeing this, Murong Yu's heart completely relaxed. However, just as he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, he caught a glimpse of a black lightning symbol shooting down from the sky from the corner of his eye. Murong Yu was shocked. The aura of death instantly enveloped his heart. The first thing Murong Yu did was to flee. However, before he could escape, the black lightning symbol had already shot down. It flashed between his eyebrows and disappeared into his body. At the same time, Murong Yu's vision turned black and he lost consciousness. What's going on? He didn't know how much time had passed. It could have been a moment or 10,000 years. Murong Yu slowly opened his eyes. The first thing that appeared in his mind was the scene before he fainted. You fainted half a day ago. Now you're in the Hichu Luoshu world. Hichu's voice rang in Murong Yu's ears. At the same time, Hichu appeared beside him. What's going on? It was the same in the cultivation world. In the end, I was almost killed by the black lightning tribulation. It's the same now. Is it because there are too many people going through the tribulation at the same time? Murong Yu couldn't figure it out. Finally, he began to examine his physical body. A body at the peak of the medium-grade divine artifact level. All 3 godhoods have reached the peak of the late stage of the heavenly god realm. What's going on? Murong Yu immediately fainted. Before he fainted, his physical body had also reached the peak of the low-grade divine artifact level after being tempered by the tribulation lightning. However, it couldn't break through to the medium-grade divine artifact level. Now, it had directly increased by 1 grade and reached the peak of the medium-grade divine artifact level, and his 3 godhoods had also reached the peak of the late stage of the heavenly god realm. Before he fainted, he was only at the late stage of the heavenly god realm. He was still far from it. When you were unconscious, your body was covered by a layer of black lightning. It should have been tempered by the black lightning. Hichu Luoshu explained. Murong Yu nodded and looked at his lightning divinity. With one look, he couldn't help but be stunned. In his body, there were 3 different types of godhoods: chaos, space, and lightning. The chaos godhood was the king of all godhoods. It was above all other godhoods. The space godhood was also different from the ordinary space godhood. It was a godhood formed by comprehending the law of space. As for the lightning divinity, although it was slightly higher than the ordinary lightning divinity, it was only by a little. It wasn't much different from the ordinary lightning divinity. But now the lightning divinity was about the same as the space godhood. Could that black lightning be the law of lightning? This thought appeared in Murong Yu's mind. Other than the law of lightning, what kind of power could raise his lightning divinity to the same level as the space godhood formed by comprehending the law of space? But what if the black lightning was really a form of the lightning divinity? But why would the law of lightning appear? Murong Yu thought of the 2 situations where the black lightning appeared. It only appeared after too many people went through their tribulations at the same time. Could it be that the law of lightning has to be comprehended like this? Murong Yu's heart stirred, but he suddenly felt a headache. If this was the only way to comprehend the law of lightning, it was too dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he would be killed by the lightning. If it was anyone else, who would be able to withstand this terrifying tribulation lightning. Not to mention the black lightning at the end. Murong Yu shook his head and threw these thoughts out of his mind. Thinking too much about things that he couldn't understand would only lead him to a dead end. Young master, you can probably put up a fight against an early overgod with just the power of a single godhood. If the power of 3 godhoods erupts at the same time, coupled with your monstrous body, even late overgods will find it difficult to kill you, Hichu suddenly said as he studied Murong Yu. In front of those true experts, sovereigns are nothing more than ants. I'm still too weak. Murong Yu shook his head. He didn't seem very excited. Hichu rolled his eyes. You've broken through from quasi-god to peak god in just a few decades. What more do you want? You're so greedy. If news of this spreads, the entire god realm will probably want to beat you up. How do you expect those who have cultivated for countless eras but have yet to step into the heavenly god realm to feel? Chapter 888. Swoosh. Murong Yu's figure appeared in the chasm once again. However, at this moment, there was no one here. In the entire chasm, other than himself, there was no one else. Furthermore, the formation character formula in the chasm had already been obtained by Murong Yu. In the future, there would probably be no one else who would enter this place. The environment here is not bad. If we can open it together, basically no one would be able to do anything to me here. Even if the other party is an Empyrean. Murong Yu's face revealed a hint of a smile. Before going through the tribulation, Murong Yu's physical body was already extremely strong. It was above the majority of the people in the god realm. And now his physical body had reached the peak of middle-grade god artifact. He believed that in the god realm, there were people whose physical bodies were stronger than his. However, there were definitely not many of them. In this place, even if it was an Empyrean, he would not be afraid. However, this place would only open for 10,000 years. It would only open once every million years. Murong Yu's brows furrowed slightly. I wonder if I can teleport in when it's closed? If it's possible, so what if I become the enemy of the entire world? The current Murong Yu could be said to be the enemy of the entire world. Borrowing the might of the heavenly tribulation, he did not know how many experts he had killed and how many forces he had offended. The moment he appeared in the god realm, he would definitely be wanted by those forces. Like a rat crossing the street, everyone would want to beat him up. Swallowing an antidote pill that old man Pei gave him, Murong Yu's figure flashed and disappeared into the chasm. When he appeared again, he was already outside the chasm. The Poison Dragon King should be reaching the end of his lifespan in these few years. With my methods, I should be able to get some treasures in the chaos. The Poison Dragon King's entire body is a treasure. I cannot miss it. Murong Yu muttered to himself. His figure flashed, and he disappeared from the spot. In reality, Murong Yu did not enter Hichu Luo Shu. He did not teleport. Instead, he concealed himself. Formation character formula concealment. There was no other way. This place was no longer a natural chasm, and Murong Yu had too many enemies. There were also many people who coveted his cultivation technique. If he was targeted by some heavenly Emperor powerhouse, Murong Yu probably would not even have time to react and would be smacked to death. Therefore, he needed to be invisible. In fact, if it wasn't for the formation formula that allowed him to become invisible, he wouldn't have used the tribulation to kill so many experts and wouldn't have come back so openly. Whoosh! Murong Yu soared into the sky, unfolded his figure in the void, and shot towards the center of the toxic continent. Since the army formula has broken through to the 3rd stage, the Phantom Light Wings should have changed as well. Now let's see what's changed and how much my speed has increased. While flying, Murong Yu suddenly thought of the breakthrough of the army character formula. With a thought, a pair of white and flawless wings appeared on his back. They spread open, looking so holy and noble. Angel wings. Immediately, these 4 words appeared in Murong Yu's mind. It was the name of the pair of wings that was completely different from the previous Black Phantom Light Wings. What's an angel? Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a hint of hesitation. He didn't know what an angel was at all. However, he didn't care too much. After all, this was just the name of the wings. The name of the third stage of the army character formula. In the void, Murong Yu's figure suddenly appeared. Then, the pure white and noble wings on his back flapped slightly. With a whoosh, Murong Yu disappeared on the spot. His entire body turned into a white light, flashing through billions of years and appearing billions of miles away. The pure white wings flapped continuously. Murong Yu kept flying in the void. That speed was comparable to Old Man Pei. In other words, Murong Yu's speed was about the same as a heavenly Emperor powerhouse. Murong Yu was shocked. The speed of this angel wings is indeed worthy of being a pair of wings formed by the third stage of the army character formula. Its speed is more than 1,000 times faster than the second stage of the Phantom Light wings. I wonder if there's a fourth stage of the army character formula? Murong Yu was overjoyed. Although it's not as fast as teleportation, there's no trajectory to follow. However, this speed isn't bad either. It's most suitable for long-distance flying. Although teleportation has no trajectory to follow. Every time it's used, it consumes a lot of mental energy and strength. In the flight of the angel wings, it doesn't consume too much strength. It can even be said that the strength consumed by flying with the angel wings is negligible. I wonder what changes will there be after the other character formulas are upgraded to the third stage? If the formation character formula is upgraded to the third stage. Murong Yu stopped in the void and didn't continue to hide. This was because he realized that hiding required a lot of strength. Even with the power of his 3 godheads, he couldn't hide for long. Therefore, invisibility could only be hidden for a short period of time. If it was for a long time, it was simply impossible. However, with his current speed comparable to a heavenly Emperor Realm powerhouse, he really wasn't afraid of anyone. Highly poisonous continent in a huge valley. At this time, a large number of powerhouses gathered outside the valley. There were very few people whose strength was below the Sky Lord realm. And most of them were powerhouses at the Heavenly King realm or above. The Poison Dragon King was in this valley. The news that the Poison Dragon King would die of old age had long spread in certain circles. Therefore, these people all wanted to come over and take a share of the loot. Putting aside the fact that the Poison Dragon King's entire body was a treasure, even obtaining a piece of the Poison Dragon King's flesh was incomparably precious. But right now, many powerhouses didn't want to obtain the Poison Dragon King's body or his treasures. They were all here for the Poison Dragon King's inheritance. One had to know that this Poison Dragon King had lived since ancient times. His life was incomparably long. Although it was said that the dragon race's life was a little longer than a human's. But it was undeniable that this was also related to the dragon race's cultivation method. If they could obtain the Poison Dragon King's cultivation method, then they would also have the same long lifespan as the Poison Dragon King. Moreover, the Poison Dragon King relied on his own strength to turn the entire continent into the highly poisonous continent. If one obtained the Poison Dragon King's poison attack, although the immortal realm was big, although there were many powerhouses, it was enough to do whatever he wanted. One had to know that although a deity could easily destroy any immortal realm below the immortal realm. Just like Murong Yu, one slap could shatter the Yin Huang immortal realm or other immortal realms. But they couldn't shatter even the smallest continent of the immortal realm with one punch. Because the continent of the immortal realm was simply too big, and the spatial resistance of the immortal realm was extremely great. Even an Empyrean realm powerhouse couldn't let his power cover the entire continent. But the Poison Dragon King could. He could turn a continent into his back garden. One could imagine how terrifying the Poison Dragon King's strength was. Although he didn't know the exact realm, he might be stronger than an ordinary Empyrean. Moreover, the Poison Dragon King had lived for so long, he definitely knew some ancient secrets. So many people, if they don't conceal themselves, they can't enter the valley at all. But if they conceal themselves, their power can't be concealed for long. They can only enter the Hichu, Luoshu, and wait for the Poison Dragon King to die. Murong Yu concealed himself and approached one of the mountain peaks outside the valley called Poison Dragon Valley. Then he flashed into the Hichu Luoshu world. Finally, the Hichu Luoshu transformed into a speck of dust and attached itself to the mountain peak. Hey, did you know? Now the immortal realm outside is in chaos. It's all because of that Murongyu. There were many powerhouses on the mountain peak. They were divided into different factions and gathered together. Murongyu, that bastard's name, shook the immortal realm. So many powers moved because of him. No matter how famous he is, it's useless. He's already dead. But that bastard is ruthless enough. Before he died, he didn't forget to take so many people with him. It's said that at least 100 Empyrean realm powerhouses died under that heavenly tribulation. 100 Empyreans, countless immortal gods, heavenly emperors. Their deaths were truly unjust. This is also because they were greedy. If they weren't greedy, why would they get close? At that time, I was far away. That's why I managed to escape from that lightning slaughter. Damn it, thinking about it now makes me feel a lingering fear. Many powers were swallowed up by other powers because of the death of their peak powerhouses. Not only had Murongyu single-handedly killed these super experts, but he had also suppressed the forces behind them. It's just like what Murongyu said. Those who took action that day will all die. Even their powers will be trampled flat by Murongyu. Although Murongyu is already dead and can't trample the powers behind them. However, many forces have been trampled over because of him. Even if Murongyu is dead, he should feel proud. Everyone was talking loudly about Murongyu's death. This made Murongyu in the Hichu Luoshu world gnash his teeth in hatred. He wished he could immediately rush out and slap these people to death. However, not to mention that he didn't have the ability to slap these people to death. The weakest of these people was at the early stage of the Heavenly King realm. If he came out, the one who'd be slapped to death would be him. Crap, they definitely already know my identity. I wonder if the Heavenly Tao sect will be implicated? Murongyu suddenly thought of this problem. He wasn't worried about the Heavenly Tao sect. Instead, he was worried about Fantong, Yang Yun, and Ling Ling. However, thinking that Fantong was protecting Yang Yun and Ling Ling, Murongyu felt relieved. Fantong's father was definitely an Empyrean realm powerhouse. Otherwise, how could he kill the Bloody Hand with a single slap? With Fantong's power, no one would be blind enough to touch him. Therefore, Murongyu patiently lurked here. Year after year, more and more experts appeared outside the Poison Dragon Valley. However, it seemed that the Poison Dragon King was still alive and had not died from exhaustion of his lifespan. However, with so many people gathered here, the Poison Dragon King did not appear. This confirmed the fact that his lifespan was about to run out. Chapter 889. Roar. Just like that, 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, suddenly, an earth-shattering sound came from the depths of the Poison Dragon Valley. Immediately, the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The void shattered, and the mountaintop was also shattered into pieces by this terrifying sound. Bang, bang, bang. When the roar came out, the people outside the Poison Dragon Valley, whether it was the super powerhouses who had reached the Empyrean level or the weaker gods who had come here under the protection of the powerhouses, did not react in time. The terrifying sound wave attack had already swept over. Immediately, countless powerhouses were blasted into a bloody mist under the impact of this terrifying sound wave. Even the Heavenly King realm powerhouses were shaken into a bloody mist. Even the Heavenly Emperor realm powerhouses were shaken to the point that their blood was churning, and they were on the verge of spitting out blood. One could imagine how terrifying that sound wave attack was. By the time many powerhouses outside the Poison Dragon Valley reacted, those powerhouses below the Heavenly King realm had already been killed by the sudden sound. Many of the Heavenly King realm powerhouses had also been killed. However, after everyone reacted to the situation, there were no more casualties. However, this was also because the remaining powerhouses were all powerhouses. Or perhaps it was because the sound wave attack no longer had much power. Puff! Murong Yu had been cultivating the entire time to consolidate his strength. However, just now he was also shaken to the point that his blood was churning, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. This shocked him, thinking that the Poison Dragon King had come out. One had to know that he had been shaken to the point of vomiting blood in the Hichu, Luoshu world. If he was outside, wouldn't he have been killed? Murong Yu, who was in a state of shock, sent out a trace of his divine sense and immediately saw the miserable situation outside. Could it be that the Poison Dragon King has gone crazy? Murong Yu suppressed the shock in his heart and looked at the Poison Dragon Valley in front of him. Many people had the same thought as Murong Yu. This should be the Poison Dragon King's demonstration before his death, or rather, the final radiance of the setting sun. Someone frowned, wondering why the Poison Dragon King would suddenly do such a thing. Swish! However, before anyone could figure it out, a figure had already soared into the sky and charged toward the poisonous Dragon Valley. That person was very powerful, definitely surpassing the Heavenly Emperor realm. It was possible that he was an immemorial god or even an Empyrean realm powerhouse. With the first, there would naturally be a second. Then one by one, they soared into the sky and rushed towards the Poison Dragon Valley. However, there is still a portion of them who stayed where they were, standing motionlessly. Let's wait and see. However, after half a day, there was still no movement from the Poison Dragon Valley. Finally, people couldn't stand it anymore. One by one, they flew toward the Poisonous Dragon Valley. There were already many people who went deep into the Poison Dragon Valley, but there was no movement from the Poison Dragon Valley. If the Poison Dragon King didn't die, it would definitely roar and kill everything. However, there was no movement. Murong Yu also came out of the Hichu, Luoshu, and flew towards the Poison Dragon Valley. Although it was called a valley, it was actually as huge as the chasm in the sky. This was the lair of the Poison Dragon King. It was everyone's first time entering this place. In the past, when the Poison Dragon King was still alive, not to mention entering the Poison Dragon Valley, he didn't even dare to get within a few billion miles of the Poison Dragon Valley. Even an Empyrean realm powerhouse wasn't a match for the Poison Dragon King. Plop, plop. Murong Yu unfurled his angelic wings and quickly flew away. Along the way, he saw powerhouses falling from the sky one after another, smashing out huge pits on the ground. At the same time, the clothes, muscles, and even bones on these people's bodies were rapidly corroding. Soon, they turned into a pool of blood and finally disappeared. These people were actually poisoned to death by the poison of the Poison Dragon Valley. Among them, there was no lack of Heavenly King realm powerhouses. Seeing this scene, Murong Yu jumped in fright and hurriedly swallowed a few antidote pills before continuing forward. The closer he got to the depths of the Poison Dragon Valley, the more Murong Yu felt the terror of these poisons. Even with the antidote pills, the poison gas was still drilling into his body. Helpless, Murong Yu could only take out the Hichu Luoshu and fly in. Because the poison was too powerful, many people were forced to stop in their tracks. There was nothing they could do about it. Who asked them not to bring enough antidote pills with them? Even so, there were still many people who went deep into the Poison Dragon Valley. Swish! Murong Yu flapped his angelic wings and rushed into the depths of the Poison Dragon Valley in the blink of an eye. From afar, the corpse of a giant dragon that was many times larger than a divine mountain and emitted a faint pressure appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight. Before this, the largest corpse that Murong Yu had seen was the dragon beast at the peak of the Heavenly King realm. It was thousands of miles long. However, compared to this giant dragon's corpse, the dragon beast's corpse paled in comparison. The difference between a speck of dust and a mountain. The dragon beast was a speck of dust, and this giant dragon's corpse was a mountain. However, what made Murong Yu feel strange was that this giant dragon's corpse did not emit a powerful pressure. In fact, the Poison Dragon King was in existence even stronger than some Empyreans. The pressure emitted could even kill an immemorial god realm expert. However, this giant dragon's corpse was like the corpse of an ordinary wild beast. It did not have any aura. Even a heavenly king realm dragon beast had such a terrifying pressure after its death. Was this really the corpse of the poison dragon king? It was not only Murongyu who found it strange. Many people were suspicious. There must be a demon behind this abnormality. Therefore, many people stood in front of the poison dragon king. They only frowned as they looked at the poison dragon king, not daring to make any moves. This is definitely the corpse of a giant dragon. It's the same as the black dragon. Murongyu had seen the dragon clan with his own eyes. He still had the dragon clan's inheritance in his hands. Back then, when he received the black dragon's inheritance, he had seen a dragon that was many times larger than this poison dragon king. Therefore, he was sure that this was the corpse of a dragon. Of course, he did not know if it was the corpse of the poison dragon king. After all, he had never seen the poison dragon king before. Hichu, can you take away this poison dragon king's corpse? While everyone was hesitating, Murongyu was already looking at the giant dragon's corpse with shining eyes. The entire body of a giant dragon was a treasure. Sure, Hichu gave an affirmative answer. Then what are we waiting for? Take away the poison dragon king's corpse and then run away. Murongyu laughed. When he thought about how he had taken away the poison dragon king's corpse and how these people still didn't know anything about it, he found it funny. The poison dragon king's corpse is too huge. If you want to take it away, you have to first enlarge the Hichu Luoshu and cover his body. At that time, the existence of the Hichu Luoshu will be exposed. Do you really want to do this? Hichu did not immediately carry it out. Instead, he first asked Murongyu. Murongyu was silent as he thought about whether this was feasible. The poison dragon king was a true dragon. Although it was already dead, its body was a treasure, with enough blood for the little dragon beast and the dragon beast egg to absorb. The little dragon beast could completely transform into a true divine dragon. Moreover, it was possible to obtain the poison dragon king's inheritance. Even if the Hichu Luoshu was exposed and Murongyu was not, no one would know that the Hichu Luoshu was in Murongyu's hands. Take away the poison dragon king's corpse. Murongyu pondered for a moment and quickly made a decision. Thus, his figure flashed, and he entered the Hichu Luoshu world. Then, Hichu Luoshu arrived above the poison dragon king's corpse. Divine veins ignite. Before starting, Hichu directly ignited 10 divine veins. Then, under the terrifying power, the Hichu Luoshu instantly enlarged countless times. It transformed into 1,000,000 miles in size and covered the poison dragon king's corpse. Then, a terrifying suction force came out from the Hichu Luoshu and submerged the entire poison dragon king's corpse. Then, with a swish, the poison dragon king's corpse disappeared into thin air. Almost at the same time the poison dragon king disappeared, the Hichu Luoshu was also drawn into the void. Then, Murongyu immediately activated the teleportation and was about to leave this place. Rumble. At the moment of the teleportation, countless terrifying forces shattered the sky and fiercely bombarded the Hitu and the Book of the Luo. At this moment, everyone was shocked. They stared blankly at the Hichu Luoshu that disappeared into the void. They were still unable to react. They did not dare to believe that the Poison Dragon King disappeared just like that. Among thousands of experts, it was taken away just like that. Was this possible? If they did not see it with their own eyes, no one would believe it. Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they would not believe it. But the reality was that someone took away the Poison Dragon King's corpse in front of them. And the most crucial thing was that they did not know who did it. This made them furious, but also incomparably shocked and sullen. Say, do you think all of this was done by that Murongyu? Someone suddenly said. What kind of joke is this? Murongyu is already dead. Furthermore, even if he didn't die, he doesn't have this ability. This place isn't a natural chasm. Someone ridiculed. It must be those super existences in the divine world. It's just that the Poison Dragon King's corpse is so huge. How could there be such a huge storage ring? Everyone was puzzled, and they were constantly discussing who had such great ability. And at this moment, in the dream wilderness land that was an unknown distance away from the toxic continent, A crack suddenly split open in the sky. Following that, a yellow light descended from the sky and finally landed on the ground. Puff! Within the Hichu Luoshu, Murong-Yu's entire body was covered in spiderweb-like scars. They were so deep that his bones could be seen. Fresh blood spurted out like a fountain. Murong-Yu's mouth was also spurting out blood unceasingly. He looked like a bloody person. It was extremely terrifying. Chapter 890. Hichu Luoshu once again turned into a speck of dust and attached itself to the ground. Even heavenly venerable realm experts wouldn't be able to see it. In the Hichu Luoshu world, Suhao's entire body was about to shatter. He gritted his teeth and sat down cross-legged. The tree of life in his body started to tremble crazily, emitting waves of life force that were like stormy waves. It started to crazily wash Murong-Yu's body. After a round of washing, Murong-Yu's physical injuries healed a little. Although it wasn't completely healed yet, it was finally no longer dangerous. At this point, Murong-Yu finally thought of the previous scene and couldn't help but grit his teeth. It only took a few moments for Hichu Luoshu to appear and collect the Poison Dragon King. However, there were quite a few celestial venerable powerhouses present. These super powerhouses reacted extremely quickly and discovered he too and Luoshu at the first moment. Although they didn't know who Murong-Yu was and what kind of treasure it was. But out of instinct, they all attacked. It was their strongest attack right from the start. The terrifying power even shattered the void. If all the attacks landed on Hichu Luoshu might be fine. But Murong-Yu would definitely be reduced to dust. Fortunately, Murong-Yu's reaction speed wasn't slow either. After collecting the Poison Dragon King, he immediately tore through the void and wanted to teleport out. But even so, a portion of the attack still landed on Hichu Luoshu. Less than 1%. However, this less than 1% attack was still a super attack from many heavenly venerables. After Hichu Luoshu removed most of the power, it still almost shattered Murong-Yu's body into dust. Fortunately, Murong-Yu's body had already reached the level of a middle-grade divine artifact previously. Otherwise, his soul would probably have been shattered by now. The strength of an Empyrean is too terrifying. He could probably shatter a high-grade divine artifact with a single slap, right? Murong-Yu thought with lingering fear. Although most of the bodies of deities were not even at the level of a low-grade divine artifact. However, the strength of a deity was extremely terrifying. It was possible for them to shatter a divine artifact. Of course, this referred to powerful super experts. Ordinary deities couldn't even shatter a low-grade divine artifact. Half a day later, under the heaven-defying recovery ability of the life force, Murong-Yu's injuries had all healed to the peak. If not for the power of life, Murong-Yu's shattered body would have taken a long time to recover to its peak. With a flash, Murong-Yu disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already near the Poison Dragon King's corpse. Hichu, this should be the corpse of the Poison Dragon King, right? After appearing, Murong-Yu quickly asked. Hichu nodded his head. This is indeed the corpse of the Poison Dragon King. However, the Poison Dragon King died from exhausting his lifespan. The strength in his body was also completely exhausted. Precisely so, the current imp doesn't have any pressure at all. All of his strength was exhausted. Murong-Yu's brows furrowed slightly. Although the Poison Dragon King, without strength, was still a treasure, it was already several levels lower than him. However, she was already several levels below him. Even Murong-Yu looked down on her. After all, dragon meat that did not contain strength was actually no different from ordinary wild beast meat. It had no value. The Poison Dragon King should have burned all of his strength to be able to live until now. However, although the dragon meat already doesn't have any strength, it also doesn't contain any poison. The Poison Dragon King's former realm was at least Empyrean realm. Even if the dragon meat doesn't contain strength, it's still much better than dragon beast meat. Perfect for people who haven't become a deity to eat, helping them condense their divine spark and body. A hint of light flashed across Murong Yu's eyes. How could I forget about this? Oh, right. The Poison Dragon King should still have divine dragon blood essence on him, right? Was his divine spark destroyed? Only 10 drops of blood essence. The Poison Dragon King's divine spark is full of strength. There's no damage at all. I don't know what's going on, Hichu said, somewhat puzzled. At the same time, he handed a jade bottle and the Poison Dragon King's divine spark to Murong Yu. The Poison Dragon King's divine spark appeared blue and emitted a faint blue halo. This was a highly toxic divine spark. A poison attribute divine spark. Murong Yu looked at the highly toxic divine spark in his hand, and his face changed slightly. However, he was not afraid of anything, because as long as he did not take the initiative to absorb the power of the divine spark, even the highly toxic divine spark would not poison him to death. However, this was the Poison Dragon King's divine spark, who dared to absorb the power of the divine spark. A hint of pity flashed across Murong Yu's face. This divine spark might contain the Poison Dragon King's inheritance and incomparably enormous power. It was a pity that he could not absorb it. Other than the 10 drops of blood essence and the divine spark, Murong Yu was not interested in the other things of the Poison Dragon King. Although the Poison Dragon King definitely had countless treasures, but those treasures would definitely not be with him. At this time, it would have been divided up by others. I'll find a chance to return to the Yanhuang immortal world and distribute the dragon meat so that they can condense their divine spark and divine body. Murong Yu thought in his heart and came in front of the dragon egg. Ever since it absorbed the drop of divine dragon blood essence, the dragon egg had fallen into a deep sleep. Murong Yu came to take a look a few times. Vaguely, he felt that the dragon egg's aura was constantly growing stronger. Perhaps the dragon egg was about to be born, or perhaps it was transforming into a true mystical dragon. Little guy, a drop of divine dragon blood essence is obviously unable to let you truly transform. I'll add another drop of divine dragon blood essence for you. Transform into a true mystical dragon as soon as possible and roam the world. As he spoke, Murong Yu poured out a drop of Poison Dragon King's blood essence from the jade bottle. The Poison Dragon King's essence blood dripped onto the pure white dragon egg, and then it instantly disappeared. It must have been swallowed by the little dragon. Wong Wong. After swallowing the drop of divine dragon blood essence, the dragon egg started to tremble slightly. It was unknown whether it was excited or grateful to Murong Yu. Little guy, transform well. Murong Yu patted the dragon egg and was about to leave. Kacha. However, at this time, the huge dragon egg actually cracked. This made Murong Yu suspect that he had smashed the dragon egg with a slap. Under Murong Yu's astonished gaze, the dragon egg began to rapidly shatter. In a few breaths' time, the entire huge dragon egg shattered into thousands of pieces. Then, a little golden snake walked out of the dragon egg leisurely. It shook its head and looked dizzy. Murong Yu was speechless. The dragon egg was very big. A few Murong Yu added together could not wrap their arms around it. Originally, he thought that the little dragon would at least be the size of a calf when it was born. But now this little snake was really too small. It was only about half a meter long. After walking a few steps, the little golden snake stopped and stared at Murong Yu for a long time. At first, there was confusion in its eyes. In the end, it turned into a sense of familiarity. Just as Murong Yu was guessing what it was going to do, the little golden snake suddenly turned around and picked up a piece of dragon eggshell with its mouth. It began to chew on it. Could it be that these eggshells are nutritious? Murong Yu looked at the little snake happily eating the eggshells, and at the same time, it continued to grow. After half a day, the little golden snake had finished eating all the eggshells. At this time, its body had also reached a length of 10 feet and half a meter in size. It had already begun to take the shape of a divine dragon. It was indeed a divine dragon, and not a dragon beast. Murong Yu could guarantee this. After all, he had seen the Black Dragon and the Poison Dragon King, these two real dragons. Roar! The golden dragon let out an earth-shattering dragon roar. Then, with a shake of its body, it suddenly soared into the air and pounced towards Murong Yu. Although the golden dragon was a dragon, it had not become a god. It was only in the quasi-god realm. Murong Yu stretched out a big hand and held it down. Once this big guy pounced, with Murong Yu's body, he would be knocked down by it. Little guy, hurry up and cultivate. With your strength and your bloodline, once you are discovered, you will be eaten. Murong Yu patted the golden dragon's head and said with a smile. A hint of fear flashed in the golden dragon's eyes. Whether it was the descendant of a dragon beast or had merged with the divine dragon's blood essence, it had become a real divine dragon. There were all kinds of inherited memories in its memory. There were memories related to the dragon beast, the poison dragon king, and the drop of green dragon's blood essence that Murong Yu had obtained when he cut open the god stone. These memories combined together gave the newly born golden dragon a lot of understanding of this world. It could be said that its mentality had matured when it obtained those inherited memories. Roar, roar, roar. The golden dragon looked at Murong Yu and kept nodding, with a hint of anticipation in its eyes. You still want the blood essence? Murong Yu asked. This time, he understood the golden dragon's meaning. The golden dragon kept nodding, with a look of joy in its eyes. You little guy, aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? Murong Yu smiled. With a flip of his hand, he took out the bottle of Poison Dragon King's blood essence and godhead. Swish! Before Murong Yu could do anything, the golden dragon's head swayed. Immediately, the Poison Dragon King's godhead of poison was swallowed by it. Murong Yu turned pale with fright. Little guy, hurry up and spit out the godhead. It contains a deadly poison. You will be poisoned to death. It wasn't that Murong Yu was unwilling to give the golden dragon the godhead and blood essence. The blood essence didn't matter. In any case, Murong Yu didn't plan to let his family and friends temper their bodies. It didn't matter if he gave it all to the golden dragon. As for the godhead of poison, it didn't matter if Murong Yu gave it to the golden dragon. However, the godhead contained a deadly poison. With the golden dragon's strength, it would be poisoned to death in an instant. Murong Yu didn't want the divine dragon that he had painstakingly cultivated to be poisoned to death before becoming a god. Chapter 891. I'm fine. I'm going to sleep for a while. An unfamiliar spiritual wave came over. At the same time, the golden dragon's body fell to the ground with a plop and fell into a deep sleep. Murong Yu had a helpless expression on his face. Although the golden dragon said it was fine, Murong Yu was not at ease. He was still watching from the side, and his life force was ready. Once he found the golden dragon attacked by the poison, he would help immediately. However, Murong Yu found it strange that the golden dragon was not attacked by the poison. On the contrary, Murong Yu felt that the golden dragon's aura was rapidly growing stronger. Could it be that he is fusing with the Poison Dragon King's godhead? Murong Yu frowned. If the golden dragon could fuse with the Poison Dragon King's poison godhood, it would definitely be a good thing. However, although the Poison Dragon King was an expert in the heavenly venerate realm, he was even stronger than that. However, was the heavenly venerate realm really the top existence? What if there was an existence at an even higher level? If that was the case, once the golden dragon fused with the Poison Dragon King's godhood, he would at most be at the pinnacle of the Poison Dragon King realm and would never be able to improve. Forget it. Perhaps the heavenly venerate realm is the strongest realm. Even if it isn't, this is the golden dragon's own choice. Murong Yu sighed and continued to guard the golden dragon. However, after a few days, the golden dragon showed no signs of being attacked by the poison. In the end, Murong Yu felt relieved and left the place. In a flash, Murong Yu's figure disappeared from where he stood. Yanhuang Immortal Realm, Nanling. At this moment, Nanling had become the holy land of cultivation in the Yanhuang Immortal Realm and was no longer a forbidden place. This was because the Immortal Realm had long been unified by Murong Yu. Chaos Shenzhen had also become the strongest sect in the entire immortal realm and ruled the entire immortal realm. However, although Chaos Shenzhen ruled the entire Yanhuang immortal realm and the 36 immortal realms. However, Shenzhen did not destroy the orthodoxies of the other sects, except for the Devil's Sect, the Immortal Palace, and the Heavenly Punishing Palace. As for the other sects, they were thriving. In truth, to Murongyu, the master of the immortal realm, whether it was the 36 immortal realms or the Yanhuang immortal realm, all humans and demons were his subjects. Shenzhen, on the other hand, was like a dynasty in the secular world, ruling over this land. Meanwhile, under the dynasty, there were hundreds of schools of thought contending. However, Shenzhen didn't destroy the other sections. Instead, he recruited talented disciples from all over the world. These people would be Murongyu's capital to sweep through the divine realm in the future. Because of the strength of Shenzhen and the enormous resources of Shenzhen, as well as various cultivation techniques, countless people in the immortal world wanted to join Shenzhen. However, Shenzhen's recruitment of disciples was very strict, and the threshold was very high. This was the first day that Shenzhen publicly recruited disciples from all over the immortal world. Outside the Namling Mountains, countless experts from all over the immortal world had gathered. The crowd was like a sea. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the sky, following which a youth in black stepped out of the crack, heading towards the depths of Shenzhen. How dare you! Seeing this youth in black charge into the depths of Shenzhen, some of Shenzhen's disciples immediately roared and leaped into the air to stop the youth. The Namling Mountains was a no-fly zone that prohibited high-altitude flight. Even Shenzhen's disciples could only fly below 100 zhang in the air. And this young man was clearly many times higher than the height of 1,000 feet in the air. I am Murongyu, Holy Lord of Shenzhen. The youth in black, who was Murongyu, stood up and looked calmly at the disciples who had stopped him. They were all immortal kings. Murongyu nodded. Shenzhen's development had exceeded his expectations. There weren't many experts with low cultivation levels. There were many immortal kings, immortal lords, and so on. With a sweep of his divine perception, there were many quasi-gods as well. It seemed that Shenzhen's development in the past few decades had been faster than he'd expected. How dare you? How dare you impersonate our Holy Lord? Didn't anyone tell you that our Holy Lord had long ascended to godhood? The leader of the immortal kings shouted at Murongyu. When Murongyu's name was mentioned, he and the others had looks of worship on their faces. Murongyu is a godlike existence to them. No, Murongyu is a god. These guys, Murongyu was speechless. He was standing in front of these people, but they were treating him like an imposter. Whoosh! At this moment, a figure came from the depths of Shenzhen at an extremely fast speed. Then, before Murongyu could react, he was hugged tightly by the neck. Murongyu was shocked. Although his cultivation level had been suppressed to the quasi-god realm, he was still a peak heavenly god realm expert. Whether it was his divine perception, his reaction, or his ability to sense danger, they were all extremely terrifying. But now he couldn't dodge at all. It could even be said that he didn't see clearly who it was. The other party's speed surprised him. Big brother, you're finally back. Little Z missed you so much. While Murongyu was still in shock, a familiar voice sounded. Murongyu looked down. The person hugging his neck was none other than Little Z. Little Z still had the same body shape and was still like a mortal without any cultivation level or power fluctuation. But Murongyu didn't dare to underestimate her. Murongyu had already seen Little Z's speed just now. He couldn't react at all. One could imagine how terrifying Little Z's speed was. And Murongyu was even more curious about Little Z's origin. How dare you, Humph? You even dare to stop Brother Holy Lord? You must be blind. Little Z kissed Murongyu's face a few times and smeared her saliva all over Murongyu's face. Then, she turned her head and scolded the disciples of Shenzhen. Whoosh! The faces of these immortal kings instantly turned pale. Finally, with a plop, they knelt in front of Murongyu, their bodies trembling and their faces full of fear. They might not know Murong Yu, but they definitely didn't dare to say that they didn't know little Z, Shenzhen's little princess who never grew up. And they didn't suspect that little Z would lie to them. Since little Z said that Murong Yu was the Holy Lord, then Murong Yu was definitely the Holy Lord, their ancestor, the founder of Shenzhen, the Lord of the Immortal Realm. Little Z, don't scare them. Murong Yu glared at little Z. Then, he looked at the human immortal kings and waved his hand. A strong force immediately lifted them up and said, "You are also loyal to your duty. Shenzhen needs people like you. Since that's the case, I'll just give you a good fortune." As he spoke, Murong Yu waved his hand and immediately transferred some of his comprehension and experience into their memories. Then, he took a step forward with little Z and disappeared on the spot. "Thank you, Holy Lord." The human immortal kings were stunned at first. Then they saw the memories in their minds. Suddenly, they were excited. Even though Murong Yu had left, they knelt down in the void and kowtowed 3 times in the direction that Murong Yu had left. This time, there was no fear, only infinite gratitude. Murong Yu didn't know that this unintentional action had already given Shenzhen a few powerful and loyal disciples. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After Murong Yu entered the depths of Shenzhen, many experts in Shenzhen had already known that Murong Yu had returned. Immediately, those who were qualified to come all rushed over at the first moment. Zhao Jiqing and her 2 daughters, Murong Xian, and other Murong Yu's 4 children, Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and other core higher-ups of Shenzhen, Li Feng, and other Murong Yu's relatives and friends, all came over. Looking at the familiar faces, Murong Yu's heart was filled with excitement. These people were all his family members. A large part of Murong Yu's struggle was because of them. "Father, you're finally back? What's your realm? What's the realm of the gods like? Have you already trampled the realm of the gods and become the master of the realm of the gods?" Murong Yu's youngest son, Murong Yi, who was the 4th son, couldn't help but burst out a series of questions when he saw Murong Yu. "4th brother, father just came back. Put away your questions first." As the eldest brother, Murong Xian was more mature. He immediately glared at Murong Yi. "Aren't I just excited?" Murong Yi rolled his eyes, but didn't continue asking questions. However, he still couldn't hide his excitement. Murong Yu smiled. "I think everyone is very interested in the realm of the gods. Since that's the case, I'll first briefly explain the realm of the gods to everyone." Looking at everyone's expectant faces, Murong Yu knew that if he didn't explain it clearly, they definitely wouldn't give up. Thus, Murong Yu gave a brief account of his experiences in the god realm in the past few years. After that, everyone fell silent, because the realm of the gods was even more cruel than the immortal realm. Those who weren't strong would have a hard time establishing themselves in the realm of the gods. Especially the tribulation of the gods, it made them tremble with fear. In fact, as immortals, they had to go through the tribulation of the gods before they could ascend to the realm of the gods. After ascending to the realm of the gods, they had to go through the tribulation of the gods after condensing the divine body and Godhead. If they couldn't pass the tribulation, they could only turn into ashes in the tribulation lightning. However, the Godhead of the immortal realm and the God tribulation pill, there was no possibility of failure. However, some of them didn't have confidence in going to the realm of the gods. I know what everyone is worried about. However, the path of cultivation can only go against the heavens. If you break through, your strength will become stronger and you will have a longer lifespan. Whether you can break through or not depends on you. Of course, I came back today to help you. Seeing that everyone was silent, Murong Yu could only encourage them. Chapter 892. A month later, Murong Yu left the Yanhuang immortal realm and returned to the immortal realm. In this month, Murong Yu sealed the corpse of the poison dragon king in the Shenzhen of the immortal realm. He treated it as the sect treasure of the Shenzhen. In truth, the poison dragon king was an existence that was even stronger than ordinary heavenly masters. It was natural that he would become the sect treasure of the Shenzhen. At the same time, Murong Yu did not leave the corpse of the dragon beast for the Shenzhen. He buried it deep in the Shenzhen. One reason was that the aura of the dragon beast corpse was too strong. With the strength of the Shenzhen and the others, they could not eat the dragon beast meat at all. More importantly, this dragon beast was the mother of the golden dragon. The golden dragon was now considered one of Murong Yu's people. If he ate his mother's meat, Murong Yu would not do such a thing. In this process, Murong Yu saw that many people in the Shenzhen had started to condense their godhoods and bodies because of the dragon meat. Among them, Murong Yu's 2 sons and 2 daughters had the most terrifying aptitudes. The speed of condensing godhoods and bodies was the fastest. Of course, it was far from Murong Yu's, but the dragon meat contained some power and essence. It was better than simply absorbing the essence of God in the immortal realm. At least, it was better than the essence of God that Murong Yu had absorbed in the Ghost Region's Ghost Village. It was very beneficial for condensing godhoods and bodies. However, Murong Yu also knew that their stage was no longer the immortal realm. It should be the immortal realm. Therefore, he was eager to return to the immortal realm. He was prepared to establish a place in the immortal realm and bring everyone up. In the end, he rejected their request to follow him to the immortal realm and returned to the Tiandao sect alone. It was inevitable that Murong Yu would establish the Shenzhen in the immortal realm. And his ideal place was the supercontinents like the primitive continent and the wasteland continent. This was because the divine essence energy in these continents was much denser. However, Murong Yu's enemies were everywhere, and the entire world was his enemy. Once he showed himself, not only would he be hunted down, but his forces would also be uprooted. Taking a step back, the dream wilderness was still acceptable. However, with Murong Yu's current strength, he was unable to subdue the Tiandao sect. It can only be in the primordial wilderness. Murong Yu felt somewhat helpless. With his current strength, he should be able to establish a Shenzhen on the primordial continent and temporarily settle everyone there. Although the experts that appeared in the primordial continent were only at the peak of true god level at most. However, if an expert at the peak of the true god realm appeared in Shenzhen, with Murong Yu's speed of improvement, he should be able to sweep away the Tiandao sect. Whoosh! Hichu Luoshu directly teleported to the sky above his courtyard in the natural law school. Then Murong Yu stepped out of the void and landed in the courtyard. Whoosh! 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 As soon as Murong Yu appeared, 3 silhouettes rushed out. In an instant, Murong Yu was locked on by 3 divine senses. It's me. Murong Yu felt somewhat helpless. Why was he treated as an enemy every time he returned to his own place? It's really you? Didn't you say that you were killed in the toxic continent? Seeing Murong Yu, Fan Tong and the other 2 looked at him in disbelief, as if they had seen a ghost. Fan Tong walked up. Not only did he look at Murong Yu, but he also stretched out his hand and patted Murong Yu's body. It seemed like he wanted to confirm if it was real. Murong Yu angrily slapped Fan Tong and sent him flying. Then he stepped into the house and said, "Let's talk inside. Peak of the heavenly god realm. Brother, your realm is finally higher than mine." After being slapped by Murong Yu, Fan Tong learned a helpless fact. Murong Yu was stronger than him. Glancing at the 3 people, Murong Yu saw that they were just shocked and didn't have any other abnormalities. Then, he let out a sigh of relief and asked, "How are things these days? What's the reaction of the natural law sect?" Murong Yu was talking about the attitude of the natural law sect towards what he had done in the toxic continent. There's no news from the higher-ups of the natural law sect, but those idiots of the Heavenly Alliance and the Earth Alliance were scared. However, no one came to find trouble with the natural law sect. Fan Tong said with some disdain and sneer. He was disdainful of those people of the Heavenly Alliance and the Earth Alliance. After the news of Murong Yu spread, those guys united to remove Murong Yu from the natural law sect. They directly deprived Murong Yu of his identity as a disciple of the natural law sect. Obviously, they were worried that other experts and forces would come to find trouble with Murong Yu, and they were afraid that they would be implicated. However, the forces behind those people who were killed by Murong Yu didn't come to find trouble, at least for now. This made Murong Yu feel a little strange. Even if he was really dead, those people who were killed by him would never let go of the natural law sect behind him. Murong Yu wouldn't be so naive to think that those forces didn't know that he was a disciple of a natural law sect. Then, there are only two possibilities now. One was that they knew that Murong Yu was dead and didn't seek revenge on the natural law sect. The other was that for some unknown reason, they didn't do anything. Murong Yu was more inclined to the latter reason. Brother, since you're back, then just kill those idiots from the Heaven Alliance and the Earth Alliance and take control of the natural law sect. Fan Tong said unhappily. If he was Murong Yu, he would have killed the Heaven Alliance and the Earth Alliance long ago. Murong Yu shook his head. It's not suitable for me to be exposed now. Once I'm exposed, the people of a natural law sect will definitely take action against me. I'm not afraid of them, but once I appear, those people who were killed by me will definitely come to kill me. At that time, countless innocent disciples of the natural law sect will be implicated because of me. Then what are you going to do now? Fan Tong rolled his eyes and stopped encouraging Murong Yu to destroy the Heaven Alliance and the Earth Alliance. Go back to the Yuan Huang continent. What? Go back to the Yuan Huang continent? Brother, you're not scared, are you? Fan Tong's jaw dropped to the ground, his face full of disbelief. Yang Yin and Ling Ling also looked at Murong Yu in surprise. If I was alone, of course I wouldn't be afraid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have killed so many people. However, you all know that I ascended from the Yin Huang immortal realm. I still have many people in the immortal realm. I have to find a place to settle them down in the immortal realm. And now the best place is the Yuan Huang continent. Murong Yu explained. Then let's go to the Yuan Huang continent. I guarantee that no one will dare to touch you. The Yuan Huang continent has too little god origin energy. It's not suitable for cultivation. Fan Tong patted his chest and guaranteed. I'll definitely go to the Yuan Huang continent in the future, but now is not the time. Let's leave the natural law sect now. While speaking, Murong Yu's expression changed, and he changed into another person. Although he didn't have the superb disguise technique like Old Man Pei, ordinary people wouldn't be able to recognize him. Immediately, the four of them left the natural law sect and used the teleportation formation to teleport back to the Yuan Huang continent. With Murong Yu's strength at the pinnacle of the heavenly god realm, he was qualified to use the teleportation formation. However, he still used 2 low-grade god meridians. The price was extraordinarily high. At this moment, Murong Yu finally understood why so many people came from the Yuan Huang continent, but no one returned. How could anyone have 2 god meridians? Even if they had god meridians, they wouldn't want to waste them. They would rather use them for cultivation. The Yuan Qi of heaven and earth in the Yuan Huang continent could only produce experts at the pinnacle of the true god realm. It was impossible for him to cultivate to a higher realm here. Therefore, even if there were heavenly god realm ancestors in the Yuan Huang continent, there were only a few of them. After Murong Yu and the others returned to the Yuan Huang continent, they went straight to the Ascension City. Linghu Chantian had been killed by Murong Yu, so the Ascension City had changed hands. It was now under the control of someone called Lin Sr. Tell that Lin son to get out here. When Murong Yu and the others appeared in front of the city governor's mansion, Fan Tong shouted at the guards, "How dare you call the city governor by his name?" The guards who were only in the true god realm were enraged. They rushed toward Murong Yu and the others. These bastards, are they blind? Seeing that a few true gods dared to attack him, who was in the heavenly god realm, Fan Tong's lungs were about to explode. Immediately, he released his powerful aura, enveloping the entire Ascension City in an instant. Plop, plop, plop. In less than a breath's time, the entire Ascension City, except for Murong Yu and the others, was suppressed to the ground. All of them looked panicked and terrified. The city governor's guards were so scared that their faces turned pale. An aura of death shrouded their hearts. Lin's son, if you don't come out, I'll destroy the entire Ascension City. Fan Tong retracted his aura, but his voice was heard. Sir, please calm down. Please calm down. Before he could finish his sentence, A middle-aged man flew out quickly, looking terrified. "You're the city governor of Ascension City?" Fan Tong looked at Lin's son, who was in the peak of real God, with a gloomy face. "Yes, sir." Lin's son bowed respectfully. He didn't even have the courage to look up. "From now on, you're no longer the city governor of Ascension City. Now, my brother will take over your position as the city governor of Ascension City. Do you have any objections?" "Sir, I have no objections." Lin's son lowered his head. However, he was cursing in his heart. Even if he had objections, he wouldn't dare to voice them out. The aura of the 4 death gods was strong. Every one of them was stronger than him. They were existences that could kill him with one hand. If that's the case, then get lost. Don't appear near Ascension City in the future. Otherwise, I'll kill you. Do you hear me? "Yes, sir. I'll leave Ascension City immediately." Lin's son replied respectfully. Then, he soared into the sky like a hoodlum and escaped out of Ascension City. Chapter 893. Primordial Wilderness Continent, Ascension City. It was called Ascension City because there were 3 ascension platforms from the immortal realm here. However, other than the Yin Huang immortal realm, no one would ascend from the other 2 ascension platforms. This was because those who had ascended from the 2 immortal realms had been taken to other continents. Only the Yin Huang immortal realm had declined, and no one had ascended here. Murong Yu had chosen this place because he did not need to build a teleportation design. After driving out Lin's son, the city lord of Ascension City, Murong Yu had taken control of Ascension City. Pinnacle Heavenly God Strength was already the top expert of the Primordial Wilderness Continent. Even though no one in Ascension City was willing, they all submitted to Murong Yu's absolute power. After taking control of Ascension City, Murong Yu returned to the Yin Huang immortal realm once more. Next, the quasi-gods of Shenzhen who had undergone their tribulations began to ascend together. Within Ascension City, the ascension platform corresponding to the Yin Huang immortal realm flashed with divine light, and figures appeared one after another. In a short time, more than 10,000 people had appeared on the ascension platform, and this was just the beginning. How many quasi-gods were there in Shenzhen who had undergone their tribulations? There were definitely hundreds of thousands. What's going on? Why are there so many people ascending from the Yin Huang immortal realm? Other than one person who ascended a few decades ago, it has been many years since anyone has ascended. When they saw this scene, the people who were the most shocked were none other than those from Ascension City. In a short time, countless people rushed to the Ascension platform to watch. In the Divine Realm, it was almost impossible for a large number of people to ascend in a group like this. Murong Yu, right? Isn't our current city lord called Murong Yu? You must have heard of the person who ascended a few decades ago. I think he's also called Murong Yu. I've seen him before. He's the same person as the current city lord. Back then, he hadn't even reached the immortal realm. In just a few decades, he's already reached the heavenly god realm. Even City Lord Lin's son ran away with his tail between his legs after seeing him. How is this possible? No one would believe that he had advanced from the quasi-god stage to the heavenly god stage in just a few decades. Therefore, no one believed that Murong Yu was the quasi-god who had ascended decades ago. Even if someone saw it, they wouldn't believe it. However, they knew that the current city lord had a close relationship with the Yin Huang immortal realm. This is the god realm. The spiritual energy here was indeed much denser than in the immortal world. What's depressing is that I can't fly here. Murong Yu's 4th son, Murong Yi, walked down the ascension stage. He first felt the dense god Yuan Shi in the god realm before he said with a depressed expression, "I heard that only those who have reached the real god realm can fly." Li Ling walked over and said nonchalantly, "A true god." Murong Yi rolled his eyes, feeling a little gloomy. "I wonder if Little Purple can fly here." Little Yi, what did you say?" Before Murong Yi's voice fell, a young voice sounded in his ear. Little Purple's expression changed slightly, and then she smiled and turned to look at the boy next to her. "I was just asking if Auntie Little Purple can fly here." Murong Yu was very depressed. In front of Murong Yu, Zhao Jiqing and the others, Little Purple was a little girl who couldn't grow up. But in front of Murong Yi and the rest of the younger generation, she was like a senior. She had to force Murong Yi and the others to call her auntie. In the beginning, Murong Yi and the others were naturally unwilling, although Little Purple was much older than them. However, Little Purple still looked like a child. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for them to call her auntie? But there was no other way. Even if they had reached the quasi-god realm, they were still no match for Little Purple. Isn't it just flying? Little Purple smiled proudly, and then stepped into the air and went straight to the vault of heaven. This was a big blow to the people of Shenzhen who saw this scene. Even Murong Yu was surprised. In less than a day, almost 1 million experts of Shenzhen who had passed the divine tribulation had all ascended to the god realm and were finally settled in the Ascension City. However, these people had ascended, but Murong Yu's hands were clean, and he didn't provide any resources. This couldn't be helped. Murong Yu didn't have any resources at all, and he didn't even have some pills. However, the god realm's divine yuan qi was much richer than the immortal qi in the immortal realm. For these people who had just ascended, just absorbing the powerful divine yuan qi between heaven and earth was enough for them to cultivate. Should we go and rob a few sects? Murong Yu sat in the main hall of the city lord's mansion, frowning slightly. Murong Yu, get the hell out here. Just as Murong Yu was thinking about whether to rob the sects, an angry roar came from outside the Ascension City. They're here to deliver the resources? Murong Yu didn't get angry, and instead, he stepped out and appeared outside the Ascension City. At the same time, Fan Tong, Yang Yun, and Ling Ling also arrived. Damn it, it's actually that bastard Lin senator. If I had known, I would have killed him back then. When he saw that the person shouting outside was the former Ascension City City Lord Lin's son, Fan Tong couldn't help but be filled with killing intent. If I had killed him back then, who would send me the resources? You also know that I'm poor now, and now they're sending resources. They're all good people. Murong Yu laughed because he saw that there were more than 10 experts other than Lin Senator among them. There was no lack of heavenly god realm ancestors. The heavenly gods of the primordial continent were definitely the ancestor-level existences of every faction. If you were to take all of them down, hearing that, Fan Tong, Yang Yun, and Ling Ling were stunned at first. Then they came to their senses. Brother, I just realized that you're really shameless. Fan Tong patted Murong Yu's shoulder, but a thought flashed through his mind. Seeing that Murong Yu and Fan Tong only cared about themselves and completely ignored them, Lin's son and the others were about to explode from anger. Kid, leave the primordial continent immediately, or this will be your burial ground. Lin's son didn't say anything. Instead, a heavenly god realm expert took a few steps forward and said to Murong Yu with a cold smile. Murong Yu glanced at these people indifferently, and his expression didn't change at all. You should be the ancestor-level figures of the various factions in the primordial continent, right? I'm very curious. What did Lin Sin use to move you? Why did he ask you to take action? Murong Yu was indeed curious. Although these old fellows were the ancestors of various factions, they definitely wouldn't take action if there weren't enough benefits. However, Murong Yu really couldn't figure out what Lin's son had that could move these people. Ancestors, kill the 4 of them. 100 million low-grade divine crystals, not one less. On the contrary, I'll pay an extra 1 million low-grade divine crystals each. At this moment, Lin's son said impatiently, Divine crystals? Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a divine light. You're saying that Lin's son paid 100 million low-grade divine crystals to each of your factions? Lin's son, how did you get so many divine crystals? In the primordial continent, 100 million low-grade divine crystals was enough to move an ancestor of a large faction. Moreover, it was definitely a huge sum. At a glance, there were at least a dozen ancestor-level existences here. In other words, Lin's son had to spend at least 1 billion low-grade divine crystals to move them. 1 billion low-grade divine crystals was definitely not a small sum, even in the Tian Dao sect. One must know that the outer sect disciples of the Tian Dao sect only received 10 low-grade, divine crystals every month. Did this guy find a divine crystal mine? Morongyu glanced at Fan Tong and realized that his eyes were already shining. Lin Sun looked at Morongyu with disdain and ignored him. He just said indifferently, "Everyone, what are you waiting for? Otherwise, I'll regret it later." Rumble. Before Lin Sin's voice died away, a mid-heavenly god-level ancestor impatiently took action. He turned into a streak of light and shot toward Morongyu like a meteor. Along the way, he ruthlessly threw a punch at Morongyu. "Brother, I'll leave him to you." Fan Tong was a little tempted to give it a try. However, when he thought about how pitiful he was, he gave up the idea. Now, other than Morongyu, the three of them were only at the early heavenly god level. If they wanted to fight with their lives on the line, Fan Tong could naturally kill them. However, that would waste too much time. Morongyu nodded slightly. He took a step forward and slowly threw out a punch. "Brat, you don't know what's good for you," the attacking ancestor sneered. His fist suddenly sped up and slammed onto Morongyu's fist. Bang! Crack! The fists of the two sides collided violently halfway through their journey. Then there was the sound of bones breaking. The great ancestor's fist shattered the moment it collided with the great ancestor's fist. The terrifying power followed his fist and quickly strangled his arm. Crack, crack! Before he could react, his entire arm had already been shattered into a pile of mush. "Who's the one who overestimated himself?" Morongyu said indifferently. He took a step forward and threw out a punch. It directly hit the opposing ancestor's chest. With a bang, the ancestor's chest was blasted open. At the same time, Morongyu turned his fist into a claw and grabbed the ancestor's heart. Then, he pulled it out forcefully. The ancestor's heart and godhead were immediately pulled out by Morongyu. It was dripping with blood, extremely bloody and terrifying. "Give me back my godhead." The ancestor was terrified and furious. He charged forward. However, Morongyu sent him flying with a kick. Then, everyone saw that the ancestor's aura began to weaken rapidly. Not long after, he had dropped to the level of a quasi-god. A god's godhead was in the heart. Once the godhead left the body, it could no longer provide the body with energy. Then, that person would be crippled immediately. Although it would not be immediate death, he would become a cripple. Unless he could condense a new godhead, he wouldn't be able to. Chapter 894. Morongyu exerted a little force in his hand and crushed the ancestor's heart, revealing a godhead that was emitting a faint light. Then, under everyone's gaze, the godhead shook slightly and disappeared from his hand. He had already put it away in the Hichu, Luoshu world. "My godhead!" The old ancestor slumped to the ground, his face ashen as he muttered to himself. He knew he was finished. It was possible to condense a godhead again, but it required a lot of resources. Moreover, even with a lot of resources, it was impossible to succeed completely. He still remembered how much time and effort it took him to condense this godhead. "Morongyu, please don't hold a grudge against this lowly one. Please return my godhead. I'm willing to be your slave." As if he thought of something, the ancestor-level powerhouse knelt in front of Morongyu with a plop, kowtowing and begging for mercy. Seeing this scene, Morongyu, Fan Tong, and the others' expressions didn't change. However, the people on Lin Sin's side looked very ugly. Especially Lin Sun. His expression was extremely ugly at this time, and at the same time, his resentment towards Morongyu was even stronger. "Who wants a fight? Then hurry up. I don't have time to play with you. However, whether you fight or not, you have to give me an explanation. Recently, some of my subordinates have just ascended from the immortal world, but I'm poor. Well, I lack the most now, you all know." Morongyu didn't even look at the ancestor kneeling in front of him. He just looked at Lin Sun and the others indifferently. Morongyu didn't have the slightest sympathy for the ancestor kneeling in front of him. If Morongyu's strength was not as good as his, he would have been killed by him long ago. Morongyu had only taken away his godhead. That was already very merciful of him. Hearing Murong Yu's words, everyone's expression changed. Murong Yu was asking for benefits, or it was an apology. No matter how strong he is, there's still a limit. If you all swarm him, he won't be your match at all. Lin's son immediately became anxious, afraid that these old ancestors would be scared away. That's right. So what if he's a late-stage heavenly god? We're not weak either. The dozen or so people looked at each other and nodded in unison. Kill! Everyone shouted at the same time and rushed towards Murong Yu. If they could kill Murong Yu, they would be able to obtain over 100 million low-grade god crystals. However, if they escaped, Murong Yu would definitely come looking for them one by one. The experts of their own forces were no match for Murong Yu. At that time, they would be slaughtered by Murong Yu. All of you, step back. Let me teach these idiots a lesson. Seeing that these idiots still dared to attack, Murong Yu felt that it was very funny. Immediately, Fan Tong and the other two took a few steps back. On the other hand, Murong Yu took a step forward and teleported in front of an early-stage heavenly god old ancestor. He reached out his hand and pierced it into the old ancestor's chest, grabbing his heart. Then, with a slight force, the old ancestor's heart and godhead were pulled out. Immediately after, Murong Yu sent the ancestor flying with a kick. However, he didn't kill him. Their bodies swayed continuously as they teleported away. These so-called old ancestors were no match for Murong Yu at all. All of them had their godheads snatched away by Murong Yu in a single move, crippling their cultivation. In the end, only the middle stage heavenly god old ancestor and Lin's son were left. However, these two people's faces were very ugly, especially Lin's son, who was about to faint from fright. Do you want to do it yourself, or do I have to do it? Murong Yu slowly approached the middle stage heavenly god old ancestor. Murong Yu, I know you're very powerful, but don't force me to fight to the death with you. Seeing Murong Yu approaching him, the middle stage heavenly god old ancestor's face was ferocious, as if he wanted to fight to the death with Murong Yu. Do you have the right to do that? Murong Yu smiled. His smile was bright and heartless. You're very powerful. Perhaps I don't have the right to fight to the death with you. However, if I charge into the Ascension City and self-destruct, I wonder how many people can you save with your ability? If I'm not mistaken, there must be many of your family and friends in the Ascension City, right? The middle stage heavenly god laughed coldly. Murong Yu's face immediately turned cold. Are you threatening me? I wouldn't dare. I just want you to let me go and not bring me bad luck. From the moment you started threatening me, you were already dead. However, I won't let you die. I'll let you live a life 1,000,000 times more miserable than theirs. Murong Yu sneered and took another step forward. If that's the case, then let's fight to the death. The middle stage, heavenly god, old ancestor laughed sinisterly. His body swayed, and he charged toward the Ascension City. At the same time, the aura on his body began to rise violently. I said, you don't have the right, Murong Yu said coldly. At the same time, he teleported and appeared in front of the middle stage heavenly god. His big hand reached out. Before the middle stage heavenly god could react, he grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up like a little chick. At the same time, Murong Yu's other hand tore open the middle stage heavenly god's chest and took out his heart and godhead. Then, Murong Yu's left hand cut off the middle stage heavenly god's limbs like a knife, turning him into a human stick. Seeing that Murong Yu had cut off his limbs, the middle stage heavenly god old ancestor sneered. Even if he did not have the godhead, it would be a piece of cake for him to recover his limbs. I guess you're looking down on me right now. Cutting off your limbs is useless to you. However, why don't you regrow them now? Murong Yu sneered. The middle stage heavenly god sneered in disdain. He began to circulate his divine energy, trying to recover his right arm. However, he was stunned in the next moment. This was because when his divine power reached his left shoulder, a terrifying force devoured his divine power. Since his divine energy could not be released, his limbs could not be regrown. What did you do? What did you do to my body? The middle stage, heavenly god, was really frightened this time. If he had the godhead, he would still have the strength of a quasi-god. However, now that he had lost his limbs, he could only lie on a bed for the rest of his life. This was Murongyu's goal, because when he cut off the middle stage, heavenly god's limbs, he left some yin-yang flames on their severed limbs. Although the yin-yang flames were rare, the middle stage heavenly god would not be able to get rid of them in his lifetime. This was the result that Murongyu wanted. Whoosh! Sensing Murongyu's gaze, Lin's son, who was almost scared to death, immediately knelt down. You obtained a divine essence mine? Murongyu walked over slowly. Yes, my lord. If you want the divine essence mine, I can give you the divine essence mine and everything I have. I only beg you to spare my life. Lin's son kept kowtowing, hoping that Murongyu would let him go. At this moment, Lin's son was extremely regretful. Previously, Fantong was the only one who attacked. Although Fantong was in the heavenly god realm, Lin's son knew that Fantong's strength was not very strong. At most, he was in the early heavenly god realm. Because of this, after he escaped from the Ascension City, he used the divine essence in his hands to persuade a few patriarchs to kill Fantong. However, he never expected that Murongyu, who looked so simple at that time, would be so powerful. Killing a middle stage heavenly god was like killing intent. If he had known this earlier, he would have run as far as he could. Lin's son, I have to thank you. If you had run away previously, I wouldn't have known where to find the divine essence mine. You actually sent it to me again. You're such a good person. Murongyu walked in front of Lin's son with a smile on his face. Lin's son was so regretful that he wanted to die. My lord, I'll give you everything I have. Please spare my lowly life. Lin's son kowtowed in fear, afraid that Murongyu would kill him with a slap. Don't worry, I won't kill you. However, I won't believe you either. So, Murongyu's voice suddenly turned cold. Then he slapped Lin's son's head. Lin's son felt a tearing pain in his soul, and he almost fainted. However, a moment later, Lin's son's eyes were filled with confusion. Then, he kowtowed to Murongyu again. However, this time, there was no fear on his face. Instead, there was only respect. Lin's son greets master. Lin's son has offended you previously. Please don't take offense. Seeing this, many people had already understood. Poor comrade Lin's son's soul had been controlled by Murongyu. He had become Murongyu's servant. From then on, everything that Lin's son had would become Murongyu's. This was the first time that Murongyu had controlled someone's soul after ascending to the realm of the gods. Why didn't he control it before? This was because the people that Murongyu had met were too weak. Even if he controlled them, it would be useless. As for those who were strong, Murongyu had not met many of them. Even if he met them, he would not be able to control them. After controlling Lin's son's soul, Murongyu could check Lin's son's memory anytime and anywhere. With one look, he was a little dumbfounded. A long time ago, Lin's son was still a rogue cultivator with no background. He was the kind of person who wanted to condense a godhood, but was not qualified to do so. Originally, if he continued to develop like this, Lin's son would not be able to condense a godhood in his lifetime. However, one day, he entered a nameless mountain range and was chased by a demonic beast that was also in the quasi-god realm. Then, in the midst of running for his life, he accidentally fell into a small hole. Just when Lin's son thought that he was going to die, he discovered that it was actually a divine crystal mine. This was the so-called extreme misfortune turning into bliss. After discovering the divine crystal mine, Lin's son had been cultivating there to condense a godhood and become a god. He only came out of seclusion after reaching the realm of true god. Then, coincidentally, when Ascension City was without a master, he took the opportunity to occupy Ascension City and became the master of Ascension City. Chapter 895. There was a nameless mountain range 5 trillion miles east of Ascension City. This mountain range wasn't very big, and the spiritual energy wasn't rich either. Therefore, There weren't even many powerful demonic beasts in this mountain range, let alone humans. It could even be said that if there were no treasures here, no one would appear here, even for an era. But now, a group of 3 people appeared. City Lord Murong Yu of Ascension City, Fan Tong, and Lin's son, whose soul was controlled by Murong Yu. Holy Master, that divine crystal mine is there. Not long after Murong Yu and the other 2 entered the mountain range, Lin's son pointed at an ordinary small hole on the ground and said. Murong Yu nodded. He had read Lin Sen's memories. He knew that Lin's son had discovered the divine crystal mine hidden deep underground after falling into this small hole back then. Besides, Suhao wouldn't know what tricks Lin's son was up to. After all, his soul was already controlled by Murong Yu. Seeing that Murong Yu was the first to return and wanted to enter the small hole, Fan Tong couldn't help but pull him back and say, "Can this guy be trusted?" "No problem." Murong Yu smiled slightly. Then he flew down the small hole first. Fan Tong followed closely behind, followed by Lin's son at the end. The small hole was extremely deep. Murong Yu descended for a long time. Gradually, he felt rich divine essence power rushing towards him. Furthermore, as he descended deeper, the divine essence power became denser and denser. After descending more than 10 billion miles, Murong Yu finally landed on the ground again. Back then, Lin's son actually didn't fall to his death in such a high cave. On the contrary, he benefited from a disaster. It had to be said that this guy was very lucky. It was indeed a divine crystal mine. After stepping on the ground, Suhao saw a huge cave that meandered into the distance. And on the stone walls of the cave were pieces of shining crystals. This was a cave made of divine crystals. Moreover, Murong Yu also discovered that this divine crystal mine seemed to have not been developed yet. Immediately, he could not help but glance at Senator Lin's son smiled embarrassedly. He had cultivated here for countless years, so he didn't need to pick divine crystals at all. Just the amount of God Yuan Qi emitted from the God crystal mine was enough for him to cultivate. Not long ago, when he left the divine essence mine, he had casually stepped on 1 billion divine essences. However, 1 billion divine crystals was just the tip of the iceberg to this divine crystal mine. What else is there in the depths of the divine essence mine? Murong Yu studied the divine essence mine and strode in. So many divine crystals. We're rich. Fan Tong, who had been silent since entering the divine essence mine, suddenly exclaimed. His eyes lit up as he stared at the sparkling divine crystals, as if he couldn't wait to embrace them. Murong Yu looked at Fan Tong with disdain. This guy had a great background. He didn't lack divine crystals or divine veins at all. Moreover, he was very generous to his friends. But this guy had a flaw. It was that when he saw divine crystals, divine veins, and the likes, his eyes would light up. Since he wasn't greedy, but he was always like this made Murong Yu feel rather speechless. If you like it so much, then you can move this divine essence mine away, Murong Yu said to Fan Tong in disdain. But Fan Tong shook his head. I don't have the strength. Of course, if I reach the realm of Heavenly Emperor, I might consider it. Although the divine essence mine was deep underground, a Heavenly Emperor realm powerhouse reaching out a large hand could still grab the entire mine. While talking, they already penetrated several tens of thousands of miles deep into the divine essence mine. Although this divine essence mine is all low-grade divine crystals, looking at the reserves, it's at least above 1 trillion. Among low-grade divine essence mines, it's also considered a middle-grade mine, Fan Tong said with an emotional sigh along the way. 1 trillion was a trillion. A trillion was also a quadrillion. Perhaps there might be more than 10 trillion low-grade divine crystals here. After walking for a while more, Fan Tong immediately changed his tune and said. In the end, Fan Tong was already shocked until he could not speak, because they already walked a distance of 1 million miles in this mine, and this divine essence mine still could not see the end. This divine essence mine is already equivalent to middle-grade divine essence mine. I wonder if there are middle-grade divine crystals in the depths. If there aren't middle-grade divine crystals, it's impossible to extend so long. Middle-grade divine crystals. Fantong suddenly cried out in surprise. At the same time that he cried out in surprise, a surge of divine essence, even thicker than low-grade divine essence, hit head-on. At the same time, Morongyu also saw that the divine crystals above the divine essence mine started to undergo changes. Actually, divine crystals all look the same. However, apart from using the divine essence density degree they contain to differentiate, one could also use the color they displayed to differentiate. Low-grade divine crystals appeared white, divine essence energy the weakest. Middle-grade divine crystals appeared orange, while high-grade divine crystals appeared red. Now, the divine crystals that Morongyu and the other two saw were all orange. In other words, these were all middle-grade divine crystals. Fantong, what's going on? Didn't you say that every divine essence mine only has one type of divine crystal? Morongyu stopped and turned to look at Fantong. Linson also looked at Fantong curiously. In principle, yes. But there's another situation where divine crystals of different grades can appear in a divine essence mine. It looks like different kinds of mines, but it's only one mine. As he spoke, Fantong's face instantly revealed an excited expression. Morongyu was extremely shocked. Fantong's words were simply nonsense. This isn't an ordinary divine essence mine, but a special. If I'm not wrong, there's definitely a mother of divine crystals in the depths of this divine essence mine. Mother of divine crystals? What's that? Linson couldn't help but ask curiously. Originally, with his status, he couldn't be so impolite. But the excited Fantong didn't care so much. The so-called Mother of Divine Crystals is the source of the divine crystals that can nurture divine crystals. Do you know how divine crystals appear? Fantong asked Morongyu and Lin Sun excitedly. Morongyu and Lin Sun shook their heads. He didn't know. Divine crystals are actually nurtured by the Mother of Divine Crystals. Of course, it doesn't mean that they're produced like animals. The nurturing process is that the Mother of Divine Crystals can slowly transform everything around it into divine crystals. The closer it is to the Mother of Divine Crystals, the Saint tier divine crystals of the highest grade. The further it is from a Mother of Divine Crystals, the lower the grade of the divine crystal and the less divine energy it contains. According to what you said, doesn't every divine essence mine have divine crystals of various grades? Fantong shook his head. The Mother of Divine Crystals also has different grades. High-grade Mother of Divine Crystals can nurture divine scriptures. Some low-grade ones can only nurture low-grade divine crystals. That's why the divine essence mines below can only have low-grade divine crystals, and middle-grade divine essence mines not only have middle-grade divine crystals, but also low-grade divine crystals. Moreover, after every divine essence mine, as long as the Mother of Divine Crystals still exists, the divine essence mine will never dry up. So that's how it is. Morongyu nodded, but a crazy idea flashed through his mind. There's at least one middle-grade Mother of Divine Crystals here. Fantong was excited. He immediately flew past Morongyu and headed deeper into the divine essence mine. This time, it didn't go very far, only about 500,000 miles. In other words, low-grade divine crystals were as long as meridians. Red divine crystals appeared in front of them. High-grade divine crystals. This time, Fantong was even more excited. At the same time, Morongyu's heart also began to stir. After the high-grade divine crystals was the supreme-grade divine essence mine. However, the supreme-grade divine essence mine was only 10,000 miles long. After passing through 10,000 miles, they entered the supreme-grade divine essence mine. Lin Sun was so excited that he almost fainted when he saw the supreme-grade divine crystals flickering with purple light. Even Morongyu and Fantong couldn't help but be excited. Whether or not there's a sacred grade, divine crystal, we're rich. It's at least the mother of divine crystals of supreme grade, divine essence. F*CK. I didn't expect such a mine to appear on the primordial continent. What a surprise! Fan Tong cursed excitedly as he sped forward. All of a sudden, Fan Tong stopped in his tracks and stared blankly at the shimmering black divine crystal in front of him. Sacred grade divine crystals. Only a sacred grade divine crystal would emit a black light. Lin's son exclaimed when he saw the sacred grade divine crystals. Then, he fainted with a plop. What a pitiful fellow. If it weren't for the fact that someone came back to kill him, he would have been dead already. The divine crystals in this mine are enough for you to become a celestial emperor. Fan Tong had finally calmed down. That unlucky kid. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have known there was such a heaven-defying divine crystal here. This guy is definitely our lucky star. Moron, you couldn't help but laugh. Let's go. Let's go deeper and see what this so-called mother of divine crystals looks like. Moron, you grabbed Lin's son and quickly flew forward with Fan Tong. The sacred grade divine essence mine wasn't very long. It was only about 10,000 miles long. Soon, Moron Yu and Jian Wushuang had reached the end of the road. Suddenly, waves of golden light emitted from the depths of the divine essence mine. It was especially dazzling in the divine essence mine that flickered with black light. The light of the mother of divine crystals. Moron Yu and Fan Tong glanced at each other and sped up. Very soon, they arrived in a cavern that seemed like a stone room. The entire cave was filled with black crystals that contained a terrifying amount of power. Saint-grade God crystals. This was a world of sacred-grade divine crystals. However, Moron Yu and Fan Tong didn't even look at the divine crystals. Instead, they stared at the center of the stone room. A palm-sized golden crystal, which was constantly emitting a soft golden light, lay there quietly. A rich and powerful aura also surged over. Chapter 896. The Mother of Divine Crystals. When Moron Yu and Fan Tong saw the fist-sized crystal that was emitting a golden light, they cried out in surprise once again. Their voices were filled with excitement. Amidst the excitement, Moron Yu's heart was filled with doubt and confusion. This small fist-sized crystal was actually able to nurture a divine crystal mine? How miraculous! We can't touch this mother of divine crystal. That way, this divine crystal mine won't dry up. Once the mother of divine crystal is gone, the mine will be exhausted sooner or later. Fan Tong calmed down and said excitedly, "You're saying that as long as the mother of divine crystal is here, it can nurture a mine after a period of time?" Moron Yu looked at Fan Tong and asked again. Fan Tong nodded and looked at Moron Yu with confusion. "You want to take it away?" "That's too much of a pity." Moron Yu shook his head. The divine crystal mine can be discovered by Lin's son by accident, but it can also be discovered by others. When the news spreads, it'll be difficult for us to protect the mother of divine crystal with our strength. Only when the mother of divine crystal is in my control will it be the safest. Only then will I be at ease. It's a pity. If you have a spatial treasure that's large enough and similar to the real world, you can put the mother of divine crystal in it. This way, it won't be long before a divine essence mine is formed, Fan Tong said with a wistful expression. Moron Yu put the mother of divine crystal into the Hichu Luoshu world. At the same time, he smiled and said, "Who told you I don't have such a treasure? You really have such a treasure?" Fan Tong immediately became excited. However, he was more skeptical. "Don't resist." Moron Yu smiled faintly. Then he waved his hand, and the three of them disappeared. Lin Sensoul was already under his control. Naturally, he would not expose the matter of Hichu Luoshu. As for Fan Tong, after being together for so many years, Moron Yu had long recognized him as a brother. Naturally, he was not worried that he would leak the secret. This is simply too inconceivable. Fan Tong felt the scenery before his eyes change. and then he appeared in an unfamiliar space. As far as the eye could see, the surroundings were boundless, just like a real world. How big is this world? It's not very big, just average. Muronyu did not say that Hichu Luoshu was infinitely big. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Fantong. It was just that that would be too frightening. As they spoke, Muronyu had already arrived at a mountain range that stretched on endlessly. Then, he buried the mother of divine crystal at the peak of the mountain. This way, it wouldn't be long before this mountain range would be infected by the mother of divine crystals and become a divine crystal mine. As long as the mother of divine crystals wasn't destroyed, the divine crystal mine wouldn't be depleted. Ignoring the stunned Fantong, Muronyu left Hichu Luoshu and appeared in Ascension City. After controlling Ascension City, Shenzhen and close to 1 million people ascended to the divine realm. This time, Su Hao chose to bring 100,000 people into the Hichu Luoshu world. 100,000 people, all of them from the former 4 major teams, were absolutely loyal to Muronyu. Actually, it wasn't that the others weren't loyal to Muronyu, but all Shenzhen's people were absolutely loyal. The reason why he chose these 100,000 people was that they were treated as trusted aides by Muronyu. Once anything happened, Muronyu would immediately instruct these 100,000 people to do it. When they first arrived at the divine crystal mine and saw those saint-grade divine crystals flickering with black light, these 100,000 people were deeply shocked. But very quickly, they reacted and began to mine these divine crystals. Regarding this, they didn't show any dissatisfaction. Not to mention that Muronyu threw them into this divine crystal mine filled with divine essence. Even if they didn't cultivate, their strength would still increase faster than outside. Even if Muronyu threw them into a godforsaken place, they wouldn't complain, because they were able to achieve what they had today because of Muronyu. Fantong, we should go and do something. Muronyu returned to Ascension City again and released Fantong and Lin Sun from the Hichu Luoshu world. Mining the divine crystal mine? I'm not interested. You can do it yourself. Fantong thought that they were going to mine the divine crystal mine and immediately looked disinterested. No, there's naturally someone in charge of the divine crystal mine. It's time for us to visit the forces behind them. Muronyu pointed at the patriarchs of some forces in the primordial wasteland continent, whose godheads he had taken away previously. I like it. Ha! Fantong laughed out loud, and then slapped all of them unconscious. In the end, they were kept into the Hichu Luoshu world by Muronyu and flew towards the Shadow Canyon that was closest to Ascension City. The Shadow Canyon was a huge canyon. In the canyon, there was a force that was about the same size as Ascension City, but its strength was several times stronger than Ascension City. The Leaf Family. In the Leaf Family, there were more than 10 peak true god experts and 2 patriarchs who had reached the early heavenly god realm. One of the patriarchs was crippled by Muronyu and became a cripple, while the other patriarch was guarding the Shadow Canyon. Li Wenyong, get out here. With Muronyu and Fantong bolstering their courage, Lin Sun stood in the void and shouted at the Leaf family below. Who are you, scoundrel? How dare you call the patriarchs by their names? You're courting death. Before Lin Sun's roar subsided, the Leaf family was in an uproar. At the same time, several figures quickly rose into the sky and appeared in front of Muronyu and the others. A few late true god experts. In the primordial wasteland continent, a peak late true god expert was already considered an expert. Lin Sun, how dare you call the patriarchs by their names? Have you forgotten how you groveled and begged our patriarchs a few days ago? Seeing that it was Lin Sun, the Leaf family's experts scolded him. Lin Sun's face instantly turned ugly. Previously, when he came to the Leaf family for help, even though he had a large amount of divine gems, his strength was still inferior. He could only grovel and beg, which made him feel humiliated. Who are you? Call Li Wenyong out here. Otherwise, I don't mind squashing Li Wenwu to death. Lin Sun sneered and waved the unconscious Li Wenwu in his hand, who was also one of the Leaf family's patriarchs. Squashing our patriarchs to death? Who do you think you are? Of course, The Li family's people did not believe that the person in Lin Sen's hand was one of the two patriarchs that they used to look up to. Lin's son sneered and slapped the unconscious Li Wenwu awake. Li Wenwu, you'd better let Li Wenyong come out. Otherwise, if my hand trembles, your little life will be gone. Bastard, call Li Wenyong out. Hearing Lin Sen's words and thinking of Murong Yu's terrifying strength, Li Wenwu did not dare to resist. He immediately shouted at the Li family's people. This voice sounds like Patriarch Wenwu. Bastard, I'm Li Wenwu. Li Wenyong, get the F***CK out here. Li Wenyong was furious. Whoosh! A figure suddenly shot out from the depths of the Li family and appeared in front of Lin's senator. He looked at Lin's son with murderous intent and reached out his hand to grab Li Wenwu. Suddenly, a terrifying aura shrouded Lin Sen's mind, as if he could be wiped off the face of the world at any time. Lin's son instantly felt the aura of death. However, relying on Murong Yu behind him, Lin's son did not retreat. Murong Yu's cold voice rang out. You're quite impressive. Why aren't you kneeling? At the same time, a large black hand appeared out of thin air. It descended from the sky and slapped Li Wenyong. Plop! An early heavenly god, one of the ancestors of the Li clan, kneeled in front of Lin's son with a sullen expression. Plop! Plop! After Li Wenyong knelt down, the Li family's true gods knelt down one after another in fear. They knew what it meant to be able to suppress their patriarch. Who are you? Li Wenyong's heart was incomparably terrified. Amidst his terror, he looked at Murong Yu with unwillingness. City governor of Ascension City, Murong Yu, Li Wenwu, and a dozen other patriarchs came to kill me, but I took all of their godhoods. Buzz, everyone in the Li family was stunned when they heard Murong Yu's words. A dozen patriarchs had their godhoods taken by Murong Yu. Furthermore, they had joined forces. Could it be that he was an overgod? The Li family's hearts were instantly filled with despair. However, the heavens are benevolent. I'm not a bloodthirsty person. Even if they joined forces to kill me, I would only take away their godheads as punishment. Taking their godhoods is 1,000,000 times more painful than killing them directly. You're a demon. The Li family's members could not help but shiver. They were terrified. Originally, based on what your patriarchs did, all of you should have had your godhoods taken by me. Plop. Some of them fainted immediately. However, as I said before, the heavens are benevolent. If you can give me a satisfactory compensation, I won't touch you at all. However, if I'm not satisfied, then I'll have to apologize. Senior, what do you need? Li Wenyong gritted his teeth and endured the humiliation. Take me to your treasury, Murong Yu said indifferently. Li Wenyong opened his mouth. Just as he was about to refuse, he saw a cold light and terrifying killing intent flash through Murong Yu's eyes. Then, he agreed in an extremely sullen manner and led Murong Yu and the others to their treasury. Half a day later, Murong Yu and the others swaggered off, leaving behind a messy treasury and their patriarch, Li Wenwu, who looked like a dead dog. As for the Li family's treasury, it had been swept clean for countless years. Murong Yu had taken away 90% of the items. He had practically emptied their treasury. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.